Chapter 935. Clap, clap, clap. Nine-Leaf turned back into his human form and clapped his hands. Well said. But why don't you think about why I came back and slaughtered your imperial beast abode? Is it really just for revenge? Maybe the Blood Beast sect will end up like you. Not only you, but also the Northern Wei Empire. What? A possibility appeared in their minds, and they all turned pale with fright. The demon race finally couldn't hold back, and killed their way out of the northern wastelands. They also remembered that most of the experts in the Northern Wei Empire had left due to the opening of the Holy City. Maybe Chen Xian had left as well. Then who would stop the demon race's 3 rank 8 demon venerables and countless demon beasts? The 3 of them could already see the Northern Wei Empire turning into a river of blood. However, this was their last thought because in the next moment, their heads were gone. The demon race's last and largest group was led by the Silver-Winged Demon Venerable. They directly broke through the Northern Wei Empire's 100,000 soldiers and killed their way into the Northern Wei Empire. These demon beasts didn't kill too many ordinary people. Instead, they rushed towards the Northern Wei Empire's imperial capital like a tide. When Emperor Wei Xuandi heard the news, countless demon beasts were only 1,000 miles away from the imperial capital. According to the speed of the demon race, they would reach the imperial capital in 1 or 2 days. Emperor Wei Xuandi was scared out of his wits. Currently, there were only a dozen Sky Origin Realm experts in the Imperial Hall of Worship. There were also a few who were guarding the other borders. It was too late to call them back. What made him feel the most helpless was that Chen Xian was not here. Without Chen Xian, the mystic comprehending realm expert, the Northern Wei Empire had no ability to resist the rank 8 demon venerables. The moment the war started, they were destined to lose. He sat on the dragon throne dispiritedly. Pass down the decree. Abandon the imperial capital and gather all forces to escape to the Starfall dynasty. It was impossible to defend the imperial capital and the Northern Wei Empire. The only thing he could do was to preserve the power of the imperial capital. Even if the Northern Wei Empire was gone, they would still have a place to stand. The Starfall dynasty's emperor Inkongji rubbed his forehead. The emperor had a lot of troubles recently. Some high-ranking officials of the Starfall dynasty's 48 counties were assassinated at the same time. One had to know that although those people's cultivation was not high, they had many experts protecting them. How could they die just like that? It wouldn't have been a big deal if it was just 1 or 2 states. But the problem was that the same thing had happened in all 48 states. Inkongji instantly knew that there must be a conspiracy behind this, and there were very few people or forces in the world who could do such a thing. The Bloodcloak Pavilion, one of the 7 absolutes in the Starfall continent, had to be the organization with the strongest assassination ability. However, the Bloodcloak Pavilion was located far away in the Thunderblaze dynasty. They could not reach the Starfall dynasty at all. Thinking of this, Inkongji's expression froze. No, the Thunderfire dynasty's king of the west, Lung Shiqi, is the pavilion master of the Blood Clothing Pavilion. The Blood Clothing Pavilion has most likely been recruited by the Thunderfire dynasty. Perhaps, he is the one who sent a large number of assassins to infiltrate the various provinces and counties. But it is impossible for the Blood Cloak Pavilion to infiltrate the 48 provinces and counties without being detected by the intelligence network of our dynasty in a short period of time. Unless this has been planned for a long time. This was not the biggest headache for him. What was even more troublesome was that as long as there was someone to fill the vacancy, they would still be assassinated again. In other words, whoever sat in this position would die. If that was the case, who would dare to take the position? However, once these positions were vacant, many things would become chaotic. For a short period of time, the situation could still be barely maintained. But if this continued, the various provinces and counties would be thrown into chaos. Not only were the high officials of the various provinces and counties killed, even the military was assassinated. The military was not a place that anyone could casually approach. But even under the heavy guard, there were still people killed. What was detestable was that the assassins were not the generals with military power, but the mid-level generals. As the generals leading the army, it was impossible for them to do everything by themselves. They were only the ones who gave orders. The ones who were truly in charge were the mid-level generals. Once they died, even if there was someone to replace them, it would still cause a lot of chaos. It would even shake the morale of the army and make them uneasy. This series of events was finally delivered to Inkongji. He angrily slammed the table. Most of the experts of the consecration hall have gone to the holy city. Otherwise, if a few of them were to be sent out, these rascals would not be so rampant. Although there were still more than 20 Sky Origin stage experts in the consecration hall, half of them were guarding the dragon vein. They could not afford to lose them. As for the rest, they were either in seclusion or outside. Only 2 or 3 of them could still be used. Unfortunately, it was just a drop in the bucket. Speaking of the holy city, Inkongji's eyes flashed. He reread a large number of memorials, and found that the assassinations were all started after the holy city appeared. That was to say, someone might have known that the holy city would appear, and that all the experts in the world would go to Lingbei County. Thus, they set up a trap in advance and waited for the holy city to appear before taking action. For some reason, Inkongji suddenly had an ominous feeling in his heart. At this moment, in the Thunderfire Dynasty's imperial palace, Emperor Lei Haoyan was wearing battle armor and holding the golden dragon spear in his hand. He was standing at the entrance of the main hall, full of fighting spirit. The civil and military officials were standing on both sides, as if they were waiting for something. Suddenly, a stream of light shot over from the horizon. Lei Haoyan stretched out his hand and grabbed it. Immediately, a giant hand of thunder condensed and caught the stream of light. When the stream of light dissipated, it was actually a jade slip. Lei Haoyan shouted, "The time has come. Commander, are you ready for the expedition to the west?" Mo Xianghua stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, the military supplies have already been secretly sent to the West Province. We can guarantee that nothing will go wrong." "Very good. It's been 10 years. We've been preparing for 10 years just for this day. 10 years. In these 10 years, the Lung Shiqi had not only been cultivating, but also preparing to attack the Starfall dynasty. The Thunderfire dynasty had 400,000 mercenaries. These 400,000 soldiers were not at the level of the Great Moon Kingdom. Each of them was definitely an elite soldier, and was equipped with the best weapons of the Thunderfire dynasty. However, these soldiers were usually scattered around the border. If they wanted to attack the Starfall dynasty, they naturally had to mobilize all of them. However, mobilizing hundreds of thousands of soldiers would cause too much of a commotion. The spies of the Starfall dynasty could easily detect it. Therefore, the Lung Shiqi used 10 years to secretly send the 400,000 soldiers and countless supplies into the West Province. On the surface, the Thunderfire dynasty's 4 main armies were still there. In fact, these were all for show. They were all new soldiers. The true elites had already been sent to the West Province. At the same time, the West Province had also taken out 150,000 elite soldiers after 10 years of cultivation. The 550,000 soldiers were ready to attack. As long as the order was given, they could attack the Starfall dynasty at any time. Lei Haoyan pointed his spear and shouted, "Let's fight!" Chapter 936. Lung Shiqi, who was deep in the mysterious passage, received news from Nine Leave in his past incarnation. He knew that his plan, which had been laid out for 10 years, had been fully launched. The demon race's invasion of the Northern Wei dynasty was a sure thing. There would be no accidents. The Thunderfire dynasty and the West Continent's joint attack on the Starfall dynasty had some hidden dangers. Perhaps the border could be easily broken through, but the Starfall dynasty was simply too big. It was impossible to slowly attack the city. If that happened, the war would drag on. The Thunderfire dynasty's foundation was far inferior to the Starfall dynasty's. It would only become more and more disadvantageous if it dragged on. Therefore, in order to ensure that they could take down the Starfall dynasty in a short period of time, Lung Shiqi directly used the trump cards of the Nether Temple and the Zhuge family. Those experts were divided into several groups to attack the various armies of the Starfall dynasty. It was just that they were not all in place yet. When the Starfall dynasty wanted to mobilize their forces to fight against the Thunderfire dynasty, they would find that there were no more soldiers available. Lung Shiqi didn't have too much energy to worry about this. He had already made all the arrangements he needed to make. Even if something unexpected happened, he still had 3 reaching heaven states on his side. As long as they were safe, nothing could go wrong. Right now, he was most concerned about the 2 saint spirit corpses in front of him. With a few light cracking sounds, the 2 corpses slowly opened their eyes. In an instant, Dao rhymes circulated, and demonic qi filled the sky. The power was so great that the nearby spatial cracks were all repelled. Lung Shiqi and the others retreated one after another with astonishment on their faces. This scene made their hair stand on end. 2 existences that should have been dead for tens of thousands of years could still have such power. Could it be that these 2 saint spirit experts were not dead? However, Lung Shiqi immediately discovered that the hands and feet of these 2 people were golden bones. They were obviously dead. Immediately after, a layer of faint saint light lingered on the bones. It was as if it was real, and it looked like skin. Everyone looked at the 2 people warily. One of them, wearing demonic armor, spoke. His voice was like 2 stones rubbing against each other. It was abnormally ear-piercing. How many years has it been? We finally see a spirit cultivator again. Another person wearing a Taoist robe said, that scam has not been seen through yet. As expected, it attracted another group of people. There are only a few reaching heaven states, but there are even metaphysical states. How could the falling star continent be reduced to such a state? I thought I could recover more of my strength. What a pity. The 2 of them seemed to be talking to themselves, but also seemed to be communicating with each other. They did not put Lung Shiqi and the others in their eyes at all. They were like fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Everyone was puzzled. These 2 people were neither human nor ghost, but they still had traces of saint aura on them. They did not know what they were. At this moment, the pure young sacred master said in disdain, "You are merely 2 remnant souls. How dare you be so arrogant?" The gazes of the 2 people instantly locked onto the pure young sacred master. 2 blood-red lights flashed in their empty eyes. Soon after, boundless killing intent covered the sky. An ant-like junior of the Heaven Ascension stage actually dares to bark in front of this saint. It seems that the Starfall continent really has no successor. The demon's supremacy was surrounded by raging demonic flames. Although he did not have a saber in his hand, he used his palm as a saber. Wherever the saber landed, it would be a boundless demonic domain. The other person struck out with his palm. Boundless Taoist connotation filled the air, and instantly formed a strange array that strangled all powers. The strength of the 2 people's attacks far exceeded that of a reaching heaven state. A golden Arhat Dharma idol appeared behind Tu Deng. When he punched out, heaven and earth seemed to tremble and the void cracked. It could be said that this was the limit of strength. The power of Buddhism should be extremely effective against demonic techniques. However, such a powerful punch only caused the demonic domain to tremble slightly. The pure young sacred master transformed into a huge sun and shone brightly. It did not have the power to shake the heavens, but the light was like the sun dispelling the shadows, causing the demonic domain to gradually dissipate. These 2 people's techniques had the ability to restrain demonic aura. The 2 of them worked together and barely blocked the demonic domain. But what about the other side? Luoying spirit supremacy and Huangwei spirit supremacy did not even have the qualifications to interfere. The others were also in the metaphysical state. Were they going to die here? At this moment, the old beggar spat a mouthful of saliva to the side and muttered, "I haven't fought for a long time. I wonder if I've become rusty." As he spoke, a majestic power of earth erupted. Instantly, the ground churned as if something was about to break out of the ground. Indeed, 2 gigantic hands that reached the heavens shattered the ground and emerged from the ground. Those hands were emitting an extremely dense aura of the laws of earth. Every pattern on the palms could be seen clearly, especially the threads that were constantly sparkling. Those were the threads of laws. The 2 gigantic hands suddenly clapped together, as if they wanted to smash the 2 corpses into pieces. However, they were firmly suppressed by the profound Taoist connotation, and could not advance even an inch. At the same time, the blue-robed man snorted. Suddenly, waves appeared in the blue sea between heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, this wasteland had turned into a vast ocean. Huge waves surged and churned, drowning the world. The disfigured youth shook his head. However, the demonic aura around him surged. Behind him, the phantom of a strange beast slowly appeared. The strange beast opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the river of stars, as if it could swallow everything in this world. Of the three people who suddenly attacked, the old beggar blocked the Taoist connotation array. The blue-robed man's blue sea tore a hole in it. Finally, the ancient strange beast's devouring power finally shattered the Taoist connotation array. The three people formed a silent tacit understanding when they attacked. However, Tu Deng and the pure young sacred master could only barely block the demonic domain. At this moment, tens of thousands of sword rays shot up. Instantly, netherworld chi filled the sky. Every sword ray contained the strange power of the laws of reincarnation, and condensed into a sword net that covered the sky. The sword net fell and shattered the boundless demonic domain. Lung Shiqi's eyes shone as he scanned the old beggar and the other two. Needless to say, these three were definitely genuine heavenly completion realm cultivators. Furthermore, they were heavenly completion realm cultivators who had cultivated for countless years. Their strength was probably even deeper than Meng Tianzong's. No wonder Meng Tianzong had specifically warned him before he came that there were definitely other heavenly completion realm cultivators hidden in this world, and that he had to be extremely careful. 3 heavenly completion realm cultivators had suddenly appeared. In addition to the pure young sacred master and Tu Deng, there were 5 of them. He could only say that they had hidden themselves deeply. What made Lung Shiqi feel strange was that this was the first time he had seen a Dao technique in this world. It turned out that even in a different world, there might be a similar power system. It was just that this Dao technique had not been passed down. Lung Shiqi was not the only one who was shocked. The old beggar and the others also looked at each other. Clearly, they did not expect that there would be so many heavenly completion realm cultivators besides them. If not for the 2 living beings' corpses, who knew how long they would have hidden. The disfigured youth looked at Lung Shiqi with a strange gaze. No one knew what he was thinking. The ones who were the most shocked were naturally Huang Wei Spirit Sovereign and Luoying Spirit Sovereign. The battle here was not something they were qualified to participate in, so they immediately retreated. However, as they retreated, their minds were completely blank. What kind of situation was this? Not only were there heavenly completion realm cultivators who had disappeared from the falling star continent for a long time, there were a total of 6 of them. I'm afraid I'm not dreaming. Huang Wei Spirit Sovereign even turned his head and asked, Luoying, don't tell me you're also a heavenly completion realm cultivator? Of course not. Fairy Luoying spat in exasperation. Originally, when the 2 heavenly completion realm cultivators, Pure Yang Sacred Master and Tu Deng, appeared, they felt that the heavenly completion realm cultivators had become mere foils and clowns. However, only now did they realize that there were only 2 clowns. Chapter 937. The 6 reaching heaven realm cultivators worked together to break through the attacks of the 2 living corpses, but they didn't feel proud. After all, the other party had only casually attacked, and they had only barely blocked it with their full strength. You have some ability. With the strength of a reaching heaven realm cultivator, you still have such battle strength in this space. Not bad. The words of the 2 seemed to be praising, but the demon sovereign condensed a malevolent black spear in his hand. In an instant, demonic flames rose, and a demonic sun appeared in the sky, as if the entire space had turned into a demonic domain. Then, the demonic spear actually tore the demonic sun apart, and a terrifying demonic power that was enough to destroy the world rushed towards the crowd. The person in the Taoist robe pointed a finger, and suddenly, a boundless Taoist connotation swept out. A finger formed 3 worlds, and each world contained a different law of power. He had actually condensed 3 types of law power, and each of them had reached the pinnacle. Yuan Demon Sky Piercing Spear. He's the demon sovereign from hundreds of thousands of years ago, the 10-directional holy demon. Luoying Spirit Sovereign shouted from behind, recognizing the identity of this person. Huang Wei Spirit Sovereign also said, the other is the Heaven and Earth Dao Ancestor, a holy spirit expert from the same era as the 10-directional holy demon. After the two of them finished speaking, they looked at each other inexplicably. It seemed like they were here to explain. It could also be said that this was the only use they had left. Leng Shiqi and the others also finally knew who their opponents were. These two were experts from hundreds of thousands of years ago. The demonic spear pierced through the sky, and Tu Deng chanted Buddha's name. In an instant, his whole body shone with golden light, as if he was gilding himself, and his aura suddenly rose by a lot. Indestructible Vajra. Arhat golden body. It was a powerful body refining technique that combined offense and defense. With a punch, several Arhat Dharma images appeared behind him, and they also punched out. The power of the punch directly shattered the void. The pure Yang sacred master was unwilling to fall behind. 9 blazing suns rose into the air. This time, each blazing sun emitted a completely different aura. Some blazed like fire, some were bone-chilling cold, and some were soft and boneless. Following that, the 9 blazing suns shot out like 9 stars in a row, heading straight for the demonic spear. The terror of the devil spear was far beyond everyone's imagination. It had easily broken through Tu Deng's Arhat Dharma idol, and even flung him hundreds of miles away. If it wasn't for the fact that the Arhat golden body was strong enough, he would have been swallowed by the spatial crack. As for the pure Yang sacred master's 9 blazing suns, they were all pierced through by the demonic spear. Leng Shiqi was already preparing when the two of them made their move. He also knew that if he didn't show his true strength, it would be unforgivable. Black and white light gathered and circulated around him. It was the power of yin and yang that was closest to the origin of the world. When the demonic spear pierced through the 9 blazing suns, the black and white light soared into the sky. The power of yin and yang spread out, and an incomparably harmonious aura appeared. The power of yin and yang actually fused together in midair, finally forming an incomparably huge Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram. When the Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram appeared, the power of the origin suppressed the world. At the same time, it also contained the supreme power of the Tao. The power of the demonic spear was already greatly reduced. Under the attack of the power of yin and yang, it finally dissipated into nothingness. The Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram even greatly affected Tao ancestor heaven and earth's 3 realms, causing the power of the 3 realms to distort. The old beggar and the other 2 people made their moves one after another, destroying the power of the 3 realms. Everyone present, including the 2 experts from hundreds of thousands of years ago, including the numerous heavenly completion realm experts, including Huangwei spiritual venerable and Luoying spiritual venerable, stared straight at Leng Shiqi. He had actually blocked the attacks of 2 Holy Spirit realm experts by himself. Although the other heavenly completion realm experts couldn't be ignored, Leng Shiqi was the one who had played the decisive role. There was also the Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram that was still displayed in the sky. The power of the origin it emitted was daunting. Several people were thinking in their hearts, is Leng Shiqi really in the heavenly completion realm? This kind of power that could directly reach the origin of the world. Perhaps it was already somewhat beyond the scope of the heavenly completion realm. The holy devil of 10 directions and Tao ancestor heaven and earth's hollow eyes revealed a dignified look. Tao ancestor heaven and earth said, the power of yin and yang has evolved to the extreme, and there is still Tao connotation. Perhaps I was wrong from the beginning. The holy devil of 10 directions said to Leng Shiqi, if you were born tens of thousands of years earlier, you would have become a holy spirit. However, even if your strength is very strong, and the 2 of us can't do anything to you, you can't do anything to us either. The current situation seemed to be relatively balanced. Leng Shiqi's side had 6 heavenly completion realm experts, but they were barely on par with the 2 experts. No one could do anything to the other, and the situation was in a deadlock. Unless there was a 7th person, the balance could be broken. Leng Shiqi raised the corner of his mouth. Who said there was no 7th heavenly completion realm expert? In an instant, boundless 9-colored spiritual light illuminated the world. It was magnificent and dreamy, and at the same time, countless figures evolved. God, devil, monster, ghost, saint. The legendary existences that existed in the falling star continent all appeared, and their power shook the 4 seas. A beautiful woman quietly appeared. Meng Tianzong. Meng Tianzong was good at illusions, but it didn't mean that she only knew illusions. What she practiced was the law of illusion, and she had the ability to turn illusions into reality. Everyone was shocked again. No one had expected that there really was a seventh heavenly completion realm expert. But how did she get in? How did she hide? How did no one notice her? Leng Shiqi took 2 steps forward and said, "Gentlemen, can we sit down and have a good talk?" The Holy Devil of 10 Directions and Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth looked at each other. Although they used to be Holy Spirits, it was somewhat impossible for them to deal with 7 heavenly completion realm experts at the same time in their current state. In particular, Leng Shiqi had mastered the power of the origin of yin and yang. If they fought with all their strength, no one could say who would win. Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth sighed slightly. "Well, you should be the strongest people on the continent now. You're qualified to know about the shocking scam. Perhaps we can join forces." Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but feel relieved. In this unknown place, they would not fight if they could. Moreover, their opponents were the strongest people from hundreds of thousands of years ago. After the previous fight, they were qualified to talk. The Holy Devil of 10 Directions asked first, "How did you know that there was a passage to leave the continent in the Holy City?" Everyone looked at Leng Shiqi silently. Judging from the power that these people had shown before, Leng Shiqi was undoubtedly the strongest. He was qualified to represent everyone. Leng Shiqi didn't hold back. He said, "There was this rumor in ancient times. Not only me, but all the major forces and experts know about it." "Rumor?" "Yes, it's a rumor," Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth said solemnly. "You heard the rumor of your ancestors and walked into the holy city in here. You must have seen some people's corpses before. They may have heard the rumor left by my generation and never come here. The 2 of us only ended up like this because we heard the rumors left behind by the previous generation. Have you ever thought about the source of this rumor?" Chapter 938. The Holy City was the passageway out of the falling star continent. This rumor had been passed down for many years, generation after generation. If one really wanted to go back in time, they would have to go back hundreds of thousands of years. Leng Shiqi's mind flashed. He combined the memories left by Heaven and Earth Taoist ancestor and the Samsara master. The Holy City was originally built by the Star Tribe to return to where they came from. After the Star Tribe was destroyed, the Holy City fell into the hands of the 4 sages. After that, the 4 sages left the falling star continent through the Holy City. This legend had been passed down since then. The 4 sages were the source of all this. Everyone else had thought of this as well. But so what? The 4 sages left the continent through the Holy City, and so did many Holy Spirit experts. What did this have to do with a scam? Very soon, everyone understood the relationship between the 2. Along the way, they saw dozens of Holy Spirit experts' corpses. The Holy Demon and Heaven and Earth Taoist ancestor said that all this was a scam. The only possibility was that it was the 4 sages who had set up this shocking scam. The 4 sages of the human tribe who had saved the human tribe from disaster and overthrown the Star Tribe. This subverted everyone's worldview. The 4 sages were great people who had started the human tribe's prosperity. How could they be the source of a scam? The Holy Demon of 10 Directions said, "You're right. Everything originated from the 4 sages." His voice was filled with hatred, as well as a hint of fear. This passageway has been very stable for hundreds of thousands of years, but the key is not the passageway, but the 4 sages. Hearing this, they looked at the surrounding space cracks and could not help but twitch their mouths. How could this be called unusually stable? Of course, they were most concerned about the 4 sages. The Holy Demon also gritted his teeth. It's them. It's all their fault. This is not a passageway. It's clearly a trap set up by the 4 sages. As he spoke, he pointed in the direction of the end of the wasteland and said, "Do you know what's at the end of the wasteland? There's no so-called exit, no so-called other continent. There are only the 4 sages who are hunters. The 4 saints have never left this place. They are at the end of the wasteland. All the Holy Spirit masters who heard the rumors were killed and devoured by them. More than 100,000 years ago, the Heaven and Earth Tao ancestor and I, 2 Holy Spirit masters, entered this place together. Fortunately, the two of us detected the danger in advance and barely managed to escape. However, even so, only a trace of remnant soul was left. Everything is a lie, a scam. We have been fooled by the four sages for hundreds of thousands of years. In the end, we are just prey in their mouths. The 10 directional sky demons' words directly shattered everyone's worldview. It turned out that this wasn't a passageway, but a death trap set up by the four sages. Moreover, the four sages, who were revered by countless people, actually treated their descendants as prey, using rumors as bait to lure them into this death trap. On the road, most of the spirit cultivator who had cultivated to the peak were people with extremely high aspirations. It was impossible for them to die of old age in the falling star continent. In order to pursue greater power, they would definitely choose to enter this place, which would completely ruin their lives. However, no one completely believed them. After all, what the 10 directional sky demons said might not be true. Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, "Even if you and the heaven and earth Tao ancestor escaped from the hands of the four sages, why didn't they chase after you?" "You don't believe me?" The 10 directional sky demon was a little angry. The heaven and earth Tao ancestor continued, "On the way here, you also saw a lot of corpses. They all escaped, but their Holy Spirit and Holy Spirit have long been taken away by the four sages. They are just walking corpses. The 10 directional sky demon and I were enemies for many years, more than 100,000 years ago. We fought countless times, and because of this, we knew each other's cultivation methods and spiritual skills very well. In a moment of desperation, we abandoned 99% of our Holy Spirit, barely keeping a little bit of remnant soul. If it weren't for your vitality to wake us up, our remnant souls would have completely dissipated in at most 1,000 years." Lung Shiqi asked again, "You all escaped by the way you came, but when we entered this place, the door closed and disappeared. Do you have a way to leave this place?" This question attracted everyone's attention. Now the seriousness of the matter had seriously exceeded their expectations. There were not only the remnant souls of the Holy Spirit Masters, but also the legendary four sages. Leaving seemed to be the best choice. Disappeared? How could that door disappear? The heaven and earth Tao ancestor and the 10 directional sky demon exclaimed at the same time. Then the 10 directional sky demon said in shock, "Oh no, maybe because your aura has been detected by the four sages. Your aura is too weak, so they think that there will be no more Holy Spirit Masters on the continent today. So they chose to completely close the passage. The next step of their plan is about to begin." Their words hit the spiritual defense line again and again, and even Lung Shiqi's eyelids were twitching. What plan? Now that we have come in, we have been targeted by the four sages. We are now grasshoppers on the same rope, so there is no need to hide anything. The heaven and earth Tao ancestor said with some horror. They want to transcend this world. For hundreds of thousands of years, they have been using this rumor to absorb the power of the Holy Spirit Masters. And then all the spiritual energy, the original energy of heaven and earth, and the power of law of the entire falling star continent. Finally, they can transcend this world. Before his voice died away, an endless holy light suddenly illuminated the whole wilderness. The brilliant holy power hit like a heat wave, and everyone felt as if they were bathed in flames, and their bodies were unbearably hot. Rays of spiritual light shone, but they were still forced to retreat hundreds of miles by the holy light. The 10 directional sky demons said in horror, "It's over, they have awakened." The Holy Spirit Masters were frightened to this extent, which showed that the four sages had left a terrible impression on them. Lung Shiqi and the others looked more and more serious. They were about to face the four sages who had created a great event for the human race. They were at most in the reaching heaven realm, and there were even two in the metaphysic realm among them. They were not qualified to even look at the four sages. How could they fight the four sages? There was no way to fight, so they could only run. However, the entrance they had come in from had been completely sealed. There was no way out now, and there was only death. Everyone could not help but feel a little desperate. Suddenly, a few voices sounded. They seemed to be far away, but also seemed to be right in front of them. In the end, it has come to this. It's just the general trend. The falling star continent is our last chance, And also our last chance. At this last moment, there are still 2 descendants here. I won't be polite. Chapter 939. Everyone did not know what had happened. Luoying Spirit Sage and Huangwei Spirit Sage, who were originally standing at their original spots, stiffened. Their eyes lost focus for a moment before they recovered. However, their eyes had undergone a drastic change. Those 2 pairs of eyes were as deep as the abyss, filled with the endless sea and fields. At this moment, Luoying Spirit Sage was no longer her, but one of the 4 saints from hundreds of thousands of years ago, Luoying Spirit Sage. Huangwei Spirit Sage was also Huangwei Spirit Sage. The 2 of them had their bodies taken over in an instant. At the same time, another 2 figures emitting holy light appeared in the sky above everyone. Based on the images that had been passed down, they recognized that these 2 were the original 6 Directions Saint and Wuji Saint. The 4 saints were indeed not dead. They even appeared in front of them. Lung Shiqi felt that his breathing was abnormally heavy. The 4 of them were famous throughout the world, and their reputations were known for thousands of years. Now the 4 of them were right in front of him. The majestic Saint aura was like an invisible mountain, pressing down on everyone. Unknowingly, the spiritual energy in their bodies seemed to have solidified, and even their thoughts became slower. I haven't seen a living person for a long time. This aura is really nostalgic. Luoying Spirit Sage stared at them with burning eyes, sending chills down their spines. Huangwei Spirit Sage said in an abnormally serious tone, "All right, stop scaring them. Let's get down to business." 6 Directions Saint and Wuji Saint did not seem to have physical bodies, but the holy light around them was as bright as real bodies. 6 Directions Saint said, "Wuji, explain it to them clearly." Wuji Saint first looked at the 10 Directions Saint Demon and Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth. His look made the 2 of them take a few steps back in fear. He said, "What you said is not true. We have never lied. This is indeed the passage out of the Falling Star continent. If you don't believe me, you can go to the end and take a look." Then he waved his hand gently. Everyone's vision blurred, and they arrived at the end of the passage. In front of them was a huge chaotic whirlpool, with spatial turbulence constantly flowing through it. Through here, you can leave the Falling Star continent. Of course, the prerequisite is that you can survive in the spatial turbulence. Several reaching heaven states looked at the chaotic vortex and fell into silence. Even the 10 celestial demons and Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth were the same. The last time they were here, they hadn't seen this thing at all. The 4 saints had taken away their saint power and saint soul. Therefore, they had always believed that the passageway did not exist. However, they could clearly sense a completely unfamiliar aura on the other side of the vortex. That was indeed a world outside of the Starfall continent. What they were more concerned about was why they hadn't left the Falling Star continent since the 4 saints weren't lying. Or had they left and now had to return? They couldn't figure it out, and their hearts were filled with doubts. Only Lung Shiqi's focus was different from the others. He vaguely realized that all the energy here seemed to be slowly flowing into the vortex. It could also be said that the vortex was constantly absorbing the energy here, whether it was energy, origin energy, or the power of laws. Saint Master Wuji glanced at Lung Shiqi and said, "You've already realized that this space wasn't a wasteland back then. It was a paradise with the most abundant spiritual energy. Now there are only a few traces of spiritual energy left." Lung Shiqi seemed to have thought of something. After they entered the secret realm in the holy city, the spiritual energy was abnormally rich, and the laws of heaven and earth were more compatible. However, after coming here, it was completely the opposite. Looking at the vortex now, he suddenly felt that the outside world was far inferior to the Falling Star continent. If he guessed correctly, the 4 saints had seized the passageway built by the Star Clan to leave here and go to a wider world. They should have left, but they found that the spiritual energy in the outside world was even more scarce. In other words, the Falling Star continent was a richer land. Lung Shiqi knew more inside information. Back then, the Star Clan and the Dark Shadow Clan both came from a place called the Zhongyuan continent. There was once a war between thousands of clans, and the world was torn apart. As a result, the Zhongyuan continent was divided into many continents. However, the falling star continent was not divided from the Zhongyuan continent. It was a spatial fragment created by an accident at the beginning of the world. When the spiritual energy in this world began to dissipate, the power of bloodline and the power of laws became thinner and thinner. This process was not slow in the Zhongyuan continent, but it was relatively slow in the falling star continent. Therefore, the Star Clan thought that the spiritual energy in the outside world was more abundant, and wanted to open a spatial tunnel to return to the Zhongyuan continent. In the end, the Star Clan was destroyed by the human race led by the Four Saints, and this tunnel fell into their hands. In order to hide the tunnel, they built a holy city. Before they planned to leave, they left behind this news so that the experts behind them could leave as well. Unfortunately, the Four Saints also miscalculated. Saint Master Wuji said, "The world we're in is called the Zhongyuan world. 1,000,000 years ago, this world only had one vast continent called the Zhongyuan continent. Later, the Zhongyuan continent fell apart and became hundreds of continents of various sizes. Through this whirlpool, we can directly reach the original Zhongyuan continent. Unfortunately, the Zhongyuan continent, and even the Zhongyuan world no longer have any spiritual energy. Not only spiritual energy, even the laws of heaven and earth are hidden. If I wait until I reach that world, my saint power will be taken away, and I will be no different from a mortal. To a spirit cultivator, the falling star continent is the last pure land in this world." The old beggar and the others were stunned. They had endured for tens of thousands of years in order to find an opportunity to improve themselves. The appearance of the holy city gave them a glimmer of hope, but now they were told that the outside world could no longer cultivate. The falling star continent was the place with the most abundant spiritual energy. This was equivalent to completely cutting off their chances of becoming a saint. "You guys are unwilling, but it's useless." Saint Master Wuji could see the disappointment in their hearts. Back then, the reason why saint spirit experts like us could become saints was because we had to go through the heavenly death tribulation. However, the heavenly death tribulation back then was different from now. If you want to become a saint, you have to completely comprehend a certain law of heaven and earth. After receiving the recognition of the world, you will become a law of heaven and earth. Therefore, the heavenly death tribulation is actually a test given to you by the will of heaven and earth. However, the heavenly death tribulation that you guys are facing is no longer like that. Probably since tens of thousands of years ago, the will of heaven and earth no longer allows saint spirit experts to exist. Therefore, as long as someone triggers the heavenly death tribulation, they will definitely die. So it was like that. Everyone finally knew the truth. It wasn't that they were too weak, nor was it that their comprehension of the laws was insufficient. It was that this world did not allow them to become saints. Chapter 940. Unwillingness welled up in their hearts. The old beggar and the others hated themselves for being born in the wrong era. But thinking about it, even if they were born tens of thousands of years earlier and successfully became a saint, they would still die here. Therefore, everyone was most concerned about their own lives. The old beggar did not know where his courage came from, but he questioned, "Old beggar, I just want to know one thing. How did so many Holy Spirit experts die?" The 10 sky demons and Tao ancestor Qianquan silently retreated, afraid that the martial saint would suddenly explode and kill them. The martial saint sighed helplessly. "They did indeed die at our hands." He admitted it. Those hundreds of Holy Spirit experts had indeed died at the hands of the Four Saints. "But I had no other choice." The martial saint explained, "Do you know that the spirit energy in the outside world had already dried up 200 to 300,000 years ago? And the spirit energy in the falling star continent was also constantly leaking out with this whirlpool. It was the four of us who worked together to set up the array to seal the spirit energy, allowing the living beings of the falling star continent to still enjoy the prosperity of spirit cultivation." Lung Shiqi and the others were somewhat skeptical. According to the 10 sky demons, the Four Saints wanted to devour the power of many Holy Spirit experts to transcend this world. But the martial saint said that they were the spirit cultivators protecting the falling star continent. Who was the one who was lying? Sacred Sovereign Wu Ji snapped his fingers, and a series of profound sacred aura arrays appeared, firmly locking the vortex in place. This saint is not lying to you, and the 10 sky demons are not wrong. Although the 4 of us are at the peak of the Holy Spirit realm, we do not have unlimited power. Furthermore, the will of the heavens and earth has already taken away our recognition, and our power is constantly weakening. In order to continue maintaining the array, we persuaded the Holy Spirit experts to help us. However, without exception, they did not mean what they said, and all of them thought of ways to return to the falling star continent. Thus we made a decision. At this point he stopped talking, but everyone knew what decision they had made. That was to kill the Holy Spirit realm experts that came later, and take away their power. From the looks of it, the 4 saints did not seem to be that sinister, and were thinking for the spirit cultivators of the falling star continent. But were they really so selfless? Leng Shiqi couldn't believe it. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. Not to mention the 4 saints, even the current Leng Shiqi could behead countless people with a single word. If the 4 saints did not have any selfish motives, they would not have left the falling star continent so resolutely. The 10 sky demons immediately sneered. Nonsense. You've never mentioned this. We were attacked as soon as we approached. That's right, our original intention had always been to protect the spirit cultivators of the Starfall dynasty, but as time passed, as more and more Holy Spirit experts died at our hands, as we became more and more dissatisfied with this world, in the end, we still became bedeviled. As Sacred Venerate Wu Ji spoke, a black mark appeared between his eyebrows, causing his aura to become extremely evil. However, the imprint immediately disappeared. It's not entirely correct to say that we've gone berserk. To be precise, we've gone berserk on our own accord. Since the later generations are not willing to be with us, we can only make them stay here forever. Hundreds of thousands of years have passed, and we've absorbed a large amount of saint energy and saint souls. More than half of them have been used to maintain the formation, and the rest have been divided equally among the 4 of us. About 100,000 years ago, our strength reached an unprecedented peak. At that time, we felt that we might as well directly swallow all the power of the falling star continent, shatter the void, and transcend this world. Unfortunately, at that time, the world changed greatly. From then on, the whirlpool would erupt with great turbulence every once in a while. We had to go all out to barely maintain it. Once the formation is broken, the spirit energy of the falling star continent will dissipate within a few years. We have no time to set up anything else in advance. Until now, the number of times the whirlpool has erupted has increased, and it has been a long time since a Holy Spirit expert has entered. Our strength has been declining. Until 10,000 years ago, we even had to abandon our bodies to survive in the form of saint souls. This is the truth that has been hidden for hundreds of thousands of years. Do you understand? Everyone was deeply shocked. It turned out that for hundreds of thousands of years, the 4 saints had endured humiliation, and even took the initiative to become bedeviled. They even gave up their bodies to protect the falling star continent. Even if they had their own selfish motives, in the end, they still gave up on their selfishness. Of course, the premise of all of this was that the martial saint did not lie to them. After saying so much, it seemed like everything could be matched, but in the end, it was still the martial saint's own words. No one could verify the truth of these words. Leng Shiqi probed. In the past, there were Holy Spirit experts that came in and became your strength, and we only have a few Heaven Ascension stages. To the dignified 4 saints, this bit of strength is not even a drop in the ocean. Therefore, Junior dares to guess that the 4 saint lords do not want to kill us and take away our power. You can still maintain such a clear mind. Not bad. Junior will make another guess. The 4 saint venerables might still need our help, right? That's right. This time, the one who spoke was not the martial saint, but the 6 directions saint. At the same time, the holy sage Luoying and the holy sage Huangwei also appeared. The 6 directions saint said, "The few of you are the strongest spirit cultivator in the falling star continent right now. This saint hopes that the few of you can help us a little, and wish that we can transcend the Middle Origin world. We have protected the falling star continent for hundreds of thousands of years, and we have done our best. Now it is time for them to repay us. Although he did not say it clearly, Leng Shiqi could feel that if the four saints wanted to transcend this world, the falling star continent would not have a good ending. The four saints who had protected the continent for hundreds of thousands of years had ended up destroying the falling star continent. Leng Shiqi was not a good person, but he had planned for 10 years to devour the world. Now the plan had been fully activated, and the two great empires were at war. If the plan went smoothly, the falling star continent would be his before long. However, at this moment, the four saints were prepared to take away his things, and even destroy them to help themselves. How could Leng Shiqi agree? Holy Sage Luo Ying continued. First of all, you have to understand that we are not asking for your opinions. After we send you out, there are two things you need to do. First, there are 4 dragon veins in the falling star continent. I will tell you the exact location later. You must obtain those 4 dragon veins. Not a single one of them can be missing. Second, this saint will give you a type of array formation. You must set it up in a set place within 10 years. If there is the slightest deviation, you should be very clear about the consequences. With that, Holy Sage Luo Ying flicked his finger, and 4 rays of golden light entered the space between Leng Shiqi and the rest's brows. They immediately knew everything. Chapter 941. Leng Shiqi carefully checked the information in his mind and the golden light. He realized that Saint Sovereign Luo Ying didn't take the opportunity to plant a restriction on them. The 4 saints were so confident. Weren't they afraid that they would go back on their words after they got out? Or was it because Saint Sovereign Luo Ying's restriction was so strong that he couldn't discover it at all? Leng Shiqi nodded obediently on the surface. He didn't dare to disobey the 4 saints in the slightest. The 10 sky demons and Tao ancestor heaven and earth were the most embarrassed. They had always hated the 4 saints to the core. Now they had become the 4 saints' lackeys and worked for them. They definitely didn't want to, but they were already lucky to have a trace of their soul left. Now they couldn't resist the 4 saints at all. If they didn't want to, they would die. They had no choice but to use silence to express their decision. Before Saint Sovereign Luo Ying could finish her sentence, there was a sudden change. The originally calm whirlpool suddenly became violent, and the power of the world descended. The golden holy array suddenly started to spin. An endless holy power gathered. However, the whirlpool exploded too suddenly. It expanded more than twice its original size, and it was still expanding. The 4 saints were shocked. It exploded so quickly this time. Quickly stabilized the array. The 4 saints attacked at the same time. Holy light filled the sky and gathered in the array. Saint Sovereign Luo Ying waved her hand gently, and Leng Shiqi and the others were instantly sent to the place where they came in. Her voice was also heard. Wait here. Once the array is stabilized, I'll send you out. This sudden turn of events caused the 4 sages to cast them aside, giving them some time to catch their breaths and digest the 4 sages' words. Leng Shiqi raised his hand, and 2 streams of black and white light shot out, isolating the surroundings. He turned around and said, "That whirlpool has gone berserk, which means that Saint Venerable Wu Ji wasn't lying about this. Everyone, what are your thoughts on this?" For a moment no one answered. What? Do all the reaching heaven realm cultivators and former saint spirits have such backbone? Leng Shiqi sneered with a cold face. Then what do you want? The 10 heavenly demons roared. You have no idea how terrifying the 4 sages are. Don't think that just because Sacred Venerable Wu Ji told you so much, you're treated as humans. In their eyes, we're not even comparable to chess pieces. Don't tell me you still want to resist? Haha. Are these the 10 heavenly demons that dominated the world hundreds of thousands of years ago? In my opinion, you're no different from a wild dog. Leng Shiqi did not give the sky fiend any face and said such words. The 10 sky demons were enraged. Demonic chi surrounded them, and their eyes turned blood red. Tao ancestor Qianquan, who was beside him, shouted, "Stop! Let's hear what he wants to say." Leng Shiqi first looked at the old beggar, the blue-robed man, and the disfigured youth and said, "The 3 of you, I still don't know your names." The old beggar stroked his beard and said, "Gulu." The blue-robed man continued, "King of the Eastern Sea." As for the disfigured youth, he said strangely, "You didn't recognize me. We met in the beast cesspool of the blood beast sect." A strange beast phantom appeared behind him. It was completely different from the one he had attacked before, but Leng Shiqi recognized it immediately. It was the venerable beast he had seen in the beast cesspool of the blood beast sect. Unexpectedly, the venerable beast was a rank 9 demon sovereign of the heavenly reaching realm. Leng Shiqi did not understand. Since the demon clan had a rank 9 demon sovereign, why were they willing to hide in the far north wilderness? No, in the past 10 years, he had met the Silver-Wing Demon Sovereign and the Gale Demon Sovereign several times, but they did not seem to know the existence of the Venerable Beast at all. Also, why did the Venerable Beast run to the Blood Beast sect? One question after another appeared in Leng Shiqi's mind, but this was not the most important thing at the moment. He continued, "What I want to say is very simple. The four sages are not trustworthy. We have no way of verifying anything they say. Furthermore, have you guys thought about what will happen to us after we finish everything?" The 10 sky demons said disdainfully, "I advise you not to think too much. The more you think, the faster you will die. If I say there is a way to leave this place, will you believe me?" Leng Shiqi suddenly said something shocking. Tao ancestor Qianquan was surprised. "Really?" Leng Shiqi raised a strong netherworld aura behind him. "I, Leng Shiqi, will never yield to the four sages. You can think that I don't know what's good for me, or that I'm hopeless. Not only will I not yield to them, but I will also not yield to this world. Those who are willing to believe me, stand by my side. I can take you out, but at the same time, it's tantamount to becoming the enemy of the four sages. They may come at any time, so you only have 3 breaths to think about it." 1. Several people were a little moved, but they were also very conflicted. If they submitted to the four sages, they could live for a while, but what about later? The four sages wanted to sacrifice the falling star continent to transcend the world. As the saying goes, when the nest is overturned, no egg can remain intact. At that time, they would also have a slim chance of survival. Old Beggar Gu smiled. "Good boy, good spirit. Old Beggar Gu will bet with you." King Donghai and Pure Yang Sacred Master did not say anything and directly stood over. Sovereign Beast looked at the 10 sky demons and said, "Idiots! Why didn't the four sages leave this place and return to the falling star continent after so many years?" His words woke the 10 sky demons from their dreams. It was very likely that the four sages could not return to the falling star continent for the time being. Otherwise, why would they use them to set up a trap? He secretly sighed at his own stupidity. Sure, Fengtian was not that stupid, but mainly because he was scared by the four sages. Tao ancestor Qianquan's fear of the four sages gradually dissipated. After so long, the four sages may not have much power left. If we don't fight, we will be slaughtered. We are not living beings. The 2 former Holy Spirit experts also chose to believe in Leng Shiqi. Tu Deng and Meng Tianzong naturally stood over. From the beginning to the end, they knew that Leng Shiqi could leave this place through the underworld at any time. Leng Shiqi said, "The situation is urgent, and there is no time to say more. Don't have any consciousness of resistance. Otherwise, don't blame me if an accident happens." Then the underworld's door opened wide, and he brought the 8 people into the underworld in an instant. However, he did not expose the existence of the underworld. Instead, he brought them to fly in the dark clouds above the underworld and sealed the aura outside. He deliberately stayed in the underworld for a while before opening the underworld's door again and bringing them to the vicinity of the Western Wasteland King's mansion. Because the other members of the underworld were fighting, only Oziu did not participate. He was also a backup plan Leng Shiqi had prepared for himself. After everyone came out, Leng Shiqi opened his mouth and vomited blood. His face was as pale as paper, and he looked like he was seriously injured and his vitality was greatly damaged. Chapter 942. No one was suspicious of his actions. After all, he must have paid a great price to escape with so many people right under the nose of the four saints. None of them harbored any evil intentions at this moment. They were already in the same boat. At this moment, they only felt that Leng Shiqi was worthy of respect. The current falling star continent is divided into 3 empires. This is the Thunderblaze Empire's West Desolation County, which is also my fief. Currently, the Thunderblaze Empire and the Falling Star Empire are at war. Let's not delay. Let's take control of the 4 dragon veins that Saint Luoying mentioned. Leave the Thunderblaze Empire to me. Leng Shiqi used the shortest words to explain the situation of the continent. At the same time, he also told them what to do immediately. The king of the East Sea nodded and said, "I'll go find the dragon vein in the East Sea." The old beggar grew, scratched his head and muttered, "The 2 empires are at war? When did this happen?" Venerable Beast was shocked when he heard the Demon King's words. "What's going on? The demons have left the northern wastelands." "That's right. If I'm not mistaken, the demons should have already contributed to the Northern Way Empire." "Venerable Beast, let's go there and take a look." Venerable Beast's eyes narrowed. "How did you know? Everyone was trapped in the space tunnel. How did Leng Shiqi know everything?" Leng Shiqi didn't hide anything. He smiled and said, "It's rare for the sacred city to appear. We have to make good use of such a good opportunity." He didn't say it clearly, but everyone immediately understood everything. It turned out that Leng Shiqi had already planned everything before they entered the sacred city. What was his purpose? The demons had taken down the Northern Way Empire. Now the Thunderblaze Empire and the Falling Star Empire were at war. The Thunderblaze Empire had Leng Shiqi, a Heaven Ascension realm expert, so the outcome was already decided. In this way, the whole world seemed to belong to him. All the dragon veins were naturally in his hands. No wonder he wasn't willing to submit to the 4 saints. He had long regarded the Falling Star continent as his own. They didn't have much to say. They weren't interested in ruling the world or unifying the world. Otherwise, they wouldn't have hidden themselves. However, the 4 sages' request reminded them of the importance of the dragon vein. Speaking of which, Leng Shiqi had to thank the 4 sages for giving him the location of the 4 dragon veins in the Starfall continent. 3 of them were in the imperial capitals of the 3 empires. Leng Shiqi had only just found out that there was a dragon vein at the end of the East Sea. Moreover, he reckoned that the 4 sages wanted to obtain these 4 dragon veins for the same reason as him. It was all for the power of providence. In the memories of the Master of Samsara, before his last reincarnation, he finally comprehended that there was still a kind of power that could compete with the heavens. It was the power of providence. This wasn't some powerful force, it was even an illusory existence. However, the power of providence was highly valued by the dynasties of the Starfall continent. It was even seen as the foundation of the dynasty, and there were at least a few divine origin stage cultivators personally overseeing it. Leng Shiqi had also entered the dragon vein of the Thunderblaze dynasty. It was definitely a holy land for cultivation. However, compared to cultivation, the dragon vein's greater benefit was that it symbolized the dynasty's providence. There were countless people in every dynasty, and spirit cultivators were only a small part of them. If the dynasty was loyal, then all the people would be loyal. Those ordinary people's faith in the dynasty would be gathered in the dragon vein. The Starfall continent had existed for countless years. After so many years, the dragon vein had gathered a lot of faith. If he could obtain the dragon vein for his own use, it would be equivalent to having endless power of providence behind him. When Leng Shiqi could control all 4 dragon veins, then he would be the ruler of the Starfall continent, and enjoy the power of faith of all the people. The 4 sages must also want to use the power of providence of the dragon vein to avoid part of the will of the world, and find a way to transcend this world. Since Leng Shiqi knew everything, of course the dragon vein would be in his hands. The king of the East Sea and the beast sovereign immediately left. Leng Shiqi looked at the 10 sky demons and Tao ancestor Qianquan. "Since things have come to this, why don't you recuperate in my Western Desolation Palace for a while? If you need anything, just ask." "That's good. When you recover, I still have something to ask of you." Tao ancestor Qianquan agreed. However, the 10 sky demons said, "Forget about me. Back then, I also left some things for the younger generation. I don't know how those unfilial descendants are doing. I'll go look for them." After saying that, he turned into a wisp of demonic chi and disappeared without a trace. Leng Shiqi turned his head and said, "This time we came out early. The war between the two dynasties has just begun. Please make a trip to the Starfall Dynasty, Master Tuding. There's no need for you to make a move. Just show your strength. If the Starfall Dynasty is willing to surrender, there will be less killing." Palace Master Meng, Brother Gulu, Luha, Luoying, and Huang Wei of the Four Sages have all fallen, and more than half of the experts have gone to the Holy City. We'll split up and attack these 3 spirit domains. We don't need to kill people, but we need to do our best to plunder all the things left behind by the Four Sages. Even if we don't find anything, we have to raise the various spirit domains to the ground. The Four Sages might return to the Starfall continent at any time. Perhaps some of their methods were left behind in the Four Sages' spirit domains. Since the two sides had become mortal enemies, they had to cut off all the chances of the other side. Following that, Meng Tianzong went to the Luoying spirit domain, while Gulu went to the Huangwei spirit domain. Leng Shiqi naturally went to the Sixth Direction spirit domain. That Sixth Direction spirit sovereign had caused a lot of trouble. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to endure, Leng Shiqi would have raised the Sixth Direction spirit domain to the ground long ago. Very quickly, 3 of the Four Sages' spirit domains were completely destroyed by a mysterious super expert. The entire Starfall continent fell into endless chaos, as if there were flames of war everywhere. And the flames of war had already spread to the Lingbei County. On this day, the places where a large number of spirit cultivators had gathered received a piece of news. The Thunderfire Dynasty had joined forces with the West Continent to attack the Starfall Dynasty. There was no declaration of war, no reason to send out troops, just like that. The border of the Starfall Dynasty only had a few 100,000 guards. In less than half a day, the stronghold was broken through. The army of over 500,000 charged straight into the capital of the Starfall Dynasty. Hearing this news, everyone felt that it was inconceivable. Where did the Thunderfire Dynasty get the confidence to fight with the Starfall Dynasty? What was terrifying was that not only did this happen, the Thunderfire Dynasty even broke through several cities along the way and was about to reach the capital. Bang! The Starfall Dynasty's emperor, Inkongji, smashed the dragon table with a slap and roared in shock and anger. How is this possible? Where did the 550,000 army come from? Lei Haoyan dared to give up the north. Is he not afraid of the Northern Wei Dynasty's sneak attack? The officials below were trembling in fear. It was also at this time that a messenger ran in from outside the palace in a panic. "Your Majesty, countless demonic beasts in the northern wastelands have already attacked the Northern Wei Dynasty." Chapter 943. Inkongji was incomparably shocked. The demonic beasts had been hiding in the northern wastelands for tens of thousands of years. It had been too long, and the people had long gotten used to the demonic beasts being weak. Even though they had never let down their guard against the demonic beasts, they still believed that the demonic beasts would not dare to invade the continent. The demonic beasts only had 2 8th-ranked demon venerables, while the humans had more than a dozen mystic comprehending experts. Unless the demonic beasts were seeking their own destruction, they would not dare to rebel. But the demonic beasts had really charged out of the northern wastelands when the holy city opened. It was useless to think too much now. Inkongji still had to face the 500,000-strong army of the Thunderfire Dynasty. How could he have the time to care about the Northern Wei Dynasty? But since the Northern Wei Dynasty had already been conquered by the demonic beasts, it was impossible to use the Northern Wei Dynasty to restrain the Thunderfire Dynasty. Something's not right. From the fact that the Thunderfire Dynasty had completely abandoned the northern defensive line, it seemed that they had long known that something would happen to the Northern Wei Dynasty. Could it be that the Thunderfire Dynasty was secretly behind the demonic beasts' invasion? Also, the timing was too good. When the Holy City opened, most of the experts of the Northern Wei Dynasty were not present. It was impossible for them to defend against the demonic beasts by relying on their combat troops. Furthermore, even if those experts could defeat the demonic beasts after leaving the Holy City, the dead would not be revived. The lost cities and countless resources would not be regenerated. The Northern Wei Dynasty was basically destroyed. Also, the 550,000-strong army of the Thunderfire dynasty, was not something that could be gathered overnight. In other words, the Thunderfire dynasty had been planning all of this for a long time. They should have known that the Holy City was about to open. Facing the powerful Thunderfire dynasty, Inkongji did not have the confidence to win. Even though the Starfall dynasty had deep foundations, they had already lost over 100,000 soldiers, and a large number of cities due to being caught off guard. It would take time for them to gather their forces from other places. It was impossible to stop the Thunderfire dynasty. The only way now was to give up on the eastern provinces and gather all their forces to build a solid defensive line. Only then would they have a chance. Just as Inkongji was pondering, someone came to report. Reporting to Your Majesty, the Northern Wei dynasty's Emperor Wei Xian and a large number of experts wished to see Your Majesty. Inkongji's eyes flashed with joy. If there were any remaining experts of the Northern Wei dynasty, then he would have a higher chance of victory. Quick, invite him in. Wei Xuandi walked into the main hall with 2 Tianyuan cultivators. The rest of the cultivators were waiting outside, so he could not bring all of them in. Just as the 2 of them were about to exchange a few pleasantries, a series of battle reports came in from outside. Reporting: the Heaven's Pivot Army was ambushed by a large number of unknown experts and suffered heavy losses. All the commanders and generals were killed, and a large number of soldiers defected. Reporting: the Migres military force was ambushed by a large number of unknown experts and suffered heavy losses. The commanders and generals were all killed, and a large number of soldiers defected. Report: as the continuous reports of defeats came in, Inkongji's body trembled. All the combat armies were being ambushed. How was he going to form a defensive line to fight the Thunderblaze dynasty? Pooh! Inkongji was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Your Majesty! The group of people immediately panicked. Wei Xuandi was also a little dumbfounded. He had finally made up his mind to abandon the Northern Wei Empire and join the Starfall Empire. However, he did not expect the Thunderfire Empire to attack the Starfall Empire and pose such a huge threat to them. However, he also understood that the Thunderblaze Empire was too powerful and had obviously planned this for a long time. Right now, the only solution was to work together. He hesitated and said, "Do we really have a chance?" "Yes." Inkongji suddenly erupted with a terrifying chill and hatred. Since the Thunderblaze Empire has sent out a large number of experts to ambush the various combat armies, why can't we directly attack the Thunderblaze Empire's main camp? Our empire still has many Heaven Origin Realm experts under us. If we work together, we should be able to gather around 40 of them. With this force, we can forcefully attack the Thunderblaze Empire's main camp. Thunderblaze Empire's Lei Haoyan is personally leading the expedition. When the Saint City opens, our Mystic Comprehending Realm experts are not around. He also doesn't have any Mystic Comprehending Realm experts protecting him. We can directly take his head. Also, 90% of the world's experts are gathered in the Lingbei County. As long as we can persuade them to take action, we still have a chance to defeat the Thunderblaze Empire. Buzz! However, all of a sudden, the boundless Buddha's light dyed the sky golden. Then the dense Buddha's light condensed into a huge swastika seal, enveloping the entire imperial capital of the Starfall dynasty within it. 2 Deng floated in the air, as if a god had descended. The entire imperial capital turned pale with fright, especially those Heaven Origin Realm experts. They didn't even have the courage to attack 2 Deng. Under that heavenly might, they were no different from ants. Who is he? This is too terrifying. What realm is he at? Mystic Comprehending Realm experts are far from being this strong. Could it be Mystic Comprehending Realm? 2 Deng said. West Continent's 2 Deng is here to pay a visit. He's from the West Continent? Right now, the West Continent and the Thunderblaze Empire had joined forces to attack the Starfall Empire. In other words, this super expert was their enemy. Amitba. Surrender to prevent the people from being plunged into misery and suffering. Inkongji's expression was stupefied as if he was already in a daze. Only now did he understand that he was destined to lose this so-called war from the beginning. This was a war without any suspense. Mystic Comprehending Realm Expert? This world actually had a Mystic Comprehending Realm Expert. And he was standing on the opposite side of the Starfall Empire. In Kongji laughed bitterly. The heavens are going to destroy my Starfall Empire. Just now, he was still prepared to fight to the death. But now he realized that even if they fought to the death, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. The ruler of a fallen empire. Ha ha ha, the ruler of a fallen empire. In Kongji laughed like a madman. He staggered out of the grand hall and slapped his own forehead in front of everyone. He committed suicide. Following In Kongji's death, the Starfall Empire that had dominated the Starfall continent for tens of thousands of years was going to be destroyed. Many people who hadn't been affected by the war felt that it was ridiculous. Their Starfall Empire was destroyed just like that, and they had become part of the Thunderblaze Empire. Soon, the Thunderblaze Empire's army rushed into the imperial capital. They didn't massacre any cities because they were already part of the Thunderblaze Empire's territory. Lei Haoyan smoothly took over everything in the Starfall Empire. The bloody battle that they had imagined didn't happen at all. The dignified Starfall Empire was destroyed by the Thunderblaze Empire just like that. This was something that no one had expected. On the other side, after the demon race conquered the Northern Wei Empire, the shocking thing was that the demon race didn't kill too many ordinary people. Instead, there were people who specially brought them to the Thunderblaze Empire. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that this was clearly a deal between the Thunderblaze Empire and the demon race. The demon race obtained a large piece of fertile land, while the Thunderblaze Empire obtained the world. Everyone knew that the Thunderblaze Empire's emperor, Lei Haoyan, had become the ruler of the world. But very few people knew who the true ruler of the world was. Leng Shiqi. Chapter 944. And the vast number of spirit cultivators in Lingbei County did not know what was going on. Every day, there would be news that would shock the world, such as the appearance of the Monster Clan, the destruction of the Northern Wei Dynasty, the invasion of the Thunderstorm Dynasty, the annihilation of the Three Realms, and so on. One by one, the news shattered their hearts. These people couldn't enter the holy city. They were only here to watch the show. But in the time it took them to watch the show, the world had changed hands. Of course, there were also cultivators from the Northern Wei Dynasty, the Starfall Dynasty, and the Three Realms who immediately rushed back, but they were all intercepted by mysterious experts on their way back. The only survivor was the extreme martial spirit region. The hundreds of experts in the Holy City's secret realm didn't know that the outside world had been turned upside down. There was still a fierce battle going on. A total of 7 to 5 Tongxian realm experts were fighting. Wuma Yuanjia, Chen Xian, and 2 unfamiliar experts were attacking 3 Tongxian realm experts together. The 3 were Old Man Xiao, Hateful Blade, and Yu Lin. The most powerful of the 3 was Yu Lin. His strange and unpredictable shadow secret technique was impossible to guard against. He suppressed Wuma Yuanjia and Chen Xian with his own strength and forced them to retreat. The 2 of them didn't understand why the Nether Temple would stand on the side of the Thunderstorm Dynasty. Hateful Blade and Old Man Xiao were fighting with the 2 unfamiliar Tongxian realm experts. The 2 of them seemed to have just entered the Tongxian realm. They had just broken through in recent years and kept it a secret. When the 7 of them were fighting fiercely, Hateful Blade suddenly stopped. A gust of netherworld qi rose around him, and Leng Shiqi, wearing the mask of the Emperor of Fengdu, walked out. He raised his hand, and in an instant the sky darkened. Endless netherworld qi suddenly formed 6 huge whirlpools that covered the sky. The terrifying reincarnation power almost burst the secret realm. The 6 paths will was like a huge millstone that stirred up the world. All the laws were shattered. Wuma Yuanjia and Chen Xian were shocked. Another Tongxian realm expert. Under the 6 paths wheel, for Tongxian realm experts were crushed into powder before they could do anything. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself. Only one more. Old Master Qiao was stunned. What was going on? Leng Shiqi didn't have time to say more. Great changes are about to happen in the sacred city. Let's go out first. Then he brought Old Man Qiao and the others, as well as the Heaven Origin Realm cultivators of the Thunderblaze Dynasty, and left the Saint City secret realm. It was also at this moment that the four saints finally stabilized the array. Then their expressions froze. Only then did they realize that Leng Shiqi and the others had disappeared. How is this possible? How did they escape? There are no traces at all. This is too strange. Even the law of space can't do that. The four of them were furious. Leng Shiqi and the others were their last hope to take the final step, but this hope had disappeared. Moreover, he had disappeared right under their noses. Even if Leng Shiqi and the others had some secret techniques or treasures, it was impossible for them to leave this place without alerting them. Otherwise, the 10 Skyfiends would not have died here, unless they had the power to surpass the four saints. However, they knew that it was impossible. Saint Sovereign Luo clenched her teeth. We should have planted a restriction in their bodies long ago. We planned to plant a restriction in them silently when we sent them out. Who would have thought that the whirlpool would suddenly change? Saint Sovereign 6 Unity sighed. What should we do now? After they leave, no one will come in again. Then we can only go out personally. Saint Sovereign Huangwei said solemnly. No. The other three objected firmly at the same time. Saint Sovereign Wuji said in a low voice. Even if you have a suitable physical body, you will be severely injured by the means left behind by the Star Tribe if you force your way out. Not only will you lose a large amount of saint power for nothing, but you might not be able to suppress those who escaped easily with your weakened power. Other than this, there's no other way. As long as you lend me some saint power, I can still set everything up. When Saint Sovereign Huangwei said that, the other three fell silent. Saint Sovereign 6 Unity was the first to break the silence. He directly sent a stream of saint power to Saint Sovereign Huangwei. Everything depends on you. In the outside world, the world had already belonged to Leng Shiqi. At that moment, he was in the Thunderblaze dynasty's dragon vein. This was his second time entering the dragon vein, but the feeling was completely different. This time he stretched out his hand, and a mini dragon vein floated into his hand. Leng Shiqi didn't hesitate at all, and directly swallowed it. This action also meant that the dragon vein here would no longer exist, and he would become a walking dragon vein. This might affect the Thunderblaze dynasty's luck, but the four saints had their eyes on the dragon vein as well. He had to take it away in advance. He could not let the dragon vein fall into the hands of the four saints. Moreover, since the dragon vein was valued by the four saints, it might have some special effects that Leng Shiqi did not know about. Then he swallowed the dragon veins of the Starfall dynasty and the Northern Wei dynasty, and finally came to the East Sea. This was his first time in the East Sea. 10 years ago, he had borrowed the power of the East Sea spirit cultivators to unify the world. However, with the increase of his strength and the existence of Tu Deng and Meng Tianzong, the power of the East Sea seemed to be irrelevant. The dragon vein of the East Sea had been found by King Donghai. As soon as Leng Shiqi entered the East Sea, King Donghai walked towards him. The two of them nodded to each other as a greeting, and then flew straight to the end of the East Sea. The end of the East Sea was a chaotic fog, and there was a spatial turbulence in it. King Donghai said, I used to think that the opposite side was another sea, but I didn't expect it to be the end of our space. The dragon vein is here. Fortunately, it's not too far away. Otherwise, even you and I might not be able to come out alive. Leng Shiqi followed King Donghai into the chaotic fog. The two of them tried their best to resist the spatial turbulence that could appear at any time. Not long after, they finally found the last dragon vein. The dragon vein of the East Sea was slightly different from the other three. It was obviously much purer. Perhaps no one had obtained it for countless years. Leng Shiqi swallowed it in one gulp, and all the dragon veins in the world gathered in his body. Suddenly, a strange power poured into his sea of consciousness. It didn't have any power, but it made his perception of heaven and earth clearer. This was the power of faith that was born after all the luck in the world returned to him. Leng Shiqi didn't want to be recognized by the will of heaven and earth. Now he had been recognized by all living beings in the Starfall continent. The power of faith. Perhaps Leng Shiqi was the first person to obtain this power. After all, even the four saints, even the people who had once unified the world, could not swallow the dragon vein. It was just that Leng Shiqi had not discovered the specific use of the power of faith, but before that he had something more important to do. That was to upgrade the underworld. Chapter 945. The conditions for upgrading the Mansion of the Dead had basically been fulfilled. Leng Shiqi had stirred up the world's disputes with great fanfare in order to collect a large number of souls and turn them into merit. The Northern Wei dynasty had been invaded by the demon race, and the Thunderstorm dynasty had attacked the Starfall dynasty. He had already collected enough merit, so he had tried his best to prevent unnecessary casualties. Now the Mansion of the Dead was only one step away from upgrading, and that was the head of a Tongxian realm expert. Leng Shiqi had first killed 6 Direction Spirit Sovereign, and the other 3 in the Holy City. When the door was about to open, he killed Yi Mei. Then he entered the Holy City's secret realm and killed Wuma Yuanjia, Chen Xian, and the 2 Tongxian realm experts who had helped them. A total of 9 people. Now he was only short of 1 head. There were very few Tongxian realm experts in the world, and there were actually more Tongxian realm experts than Tongxian realm experts. It was a strange sight. Leng Shiqi already had a target for this last head, the only surviving martial spirit region of the 4 Saint Spirit regions. Not long after Leng Shiqi had brought out the people in the Holy City's secret realm, the secret realm had inexplicably collapsed, and more than half of the people inside had died. Spirit Sovereign Wu Ji had been in the secret realm at that time, but Leng Shiqi did not dare to stay for too long in fear of being discovered by the 4 saints, so he did not specifically kill him. However, the monk could escape, but the temple could not. After Spirit Sovereign Wu Ji left the secret realm, he found out that he was the only one left of the 4 Saint Spirit regions. This successor of the 4 saints, the master of the spirit region, was greatly frightened. Since someone could easily destroy the other 3 spirit regions, destroying the martial spirit region would naturally be as easy as flipping a hand. Therefore, Spirit Sovereign Wu Ji had moved the resources and disciples of the spirit region as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, just as they had finished preparing, a person had already appeared in the sky above the spirit region. The cold netherworld energy instantly covered the martial spirit region, and some low-level spirit cultivators even died upon contact. Spirit Sovereign Wu Ji knew that this day had come. Without any suspense, Spirit Sovereign Wu Ji's head fell into Leng Shiqi's hands, and his soul was also absorbed into the Mansion of the Dead. The souls of 10 Tongxian realm experts had finally been gathered. Leng Shiqi entered the Mansion of the Dead and summoned the territory system. Mansion of the Dead has met the upgrade requirements. Upgrading the territory will require 2,000 natural days. During this period, the territory will not be able to be used. Do you wish to upgrade? Yes. The Leng Shiqi was prepared to welcome the great changes in Underworld, but strangely, Underworld did not expand this time, and there were no great changes. Just as he was feeling puzzled, he looked towards the sky above the Underworld. With a single thought, he arrived directly above the Underworld's 9 heavens. Unknowingly, a fist-sized mass of black energy had appeared here. For words suddenly appeared in Leng Shiqi's mind. World origin. The Underworld actually gave birth to the world's origin. This meant that from this moment onwards, the Underworld had truly become a world of its own. The Underworld. As for the Leng Shiqi, as long as he refines the world's origin, he can become the master of the world. He had always been the founder of Underworld, and also held the title of Lord of Underworld. In Underworld he had many special abilities. However, compared to the world's origin, the difference was like heaven and earth. Leng Shiqi gently hooked his finger, and the Underworld's origin directly entered his body. At this moment, all the living beings in Underworld knelt on the ground devoutly at the same time. They kowtowed 3 times and 9 times in the direction of Leng Shiqi, welcoming the arrival of their master of the world. What a strange feeling! Leng Shiqi clenched his hands. He seemed to be able to decide the life and death of any living being with just a thought. Just a glance was enough to shatter the void. Then he flicked his 5 fingers, and 5 rays of light scattered in all directions. In fact, those were not rays of light, but threads of law. Threads of law of the power of the 5 elements. Leng Shiqi flashed to the side of an ancient tree. With a gentle wave, The ancient tree grew at a speed visible to the naked eye, and finally withered and decayed. Every year, the law of time. After he became the master of the underworld, the 3 supreme laws and the 5 elements laws of yin and yang were all at his fingertips. This godlike feeling was intoxicating. However, Leng Shiqi did not lose himself in it. He knew very well that no matter how powerful he was in underworld, he could not bring all of it to the middle element world. After all, these were 2 different worlds. The power of law was completely different. Not only did he want to become the master of underworld, he also wanted to break free from the shackles of the middle element world and strive for supreme power. Although Leng Shiqi could choose to be the master of his world in underworld, underworld was the system's masterpiece. In the end, all of underworld's functions and powers were still dependent on the system. He had decided to be wary of the system a long time ago. All these years he had been anxious to upgrade underworld. Not because he was greedy for the so-called master of the world. Instead, he wanted to use underworld's power to fight against the middle element world, and even transcend this world like the 4 sages pursued. When that time came, underworld or the middle element world would no longer matter. After underworld's upgrade this time, there were no conditions for a second upgrade. This was because underworld had been upgraded to its limit. Although Leng Shiqi could not bring all of his power to the middle element world, he could still use some of it. He had returned to the Starfall continent. He could easily use all of the laws of heaven and earth in this world. Of course, they were not as powerful as they were in underworld. Even so, it had indirectly increased his strength, and not just by a little bit. This gave him more confidence in fighting against the 4 sages in the future. However, what Leng Shiqi did not know was that just as he was beginning to adapt to the power of the 2 worlds, a mysterious figure had arrived in Imperial Prestige Spiritual Region. He looked at Imperial Prestige Spiritual Region, which had been razed to the ground and turned into ruins. His whole body was burning with anger. He was the Imperial Prestige Spiritual Region Lord, who had paid a great price to walk out of the spatial passage. After returning to the Starfall continent, he came here immediately because he had left many things in Imperial Prestige Spiritual Region. If he could take them back, they could help him quickly recover his strength. However, what he saw was the scene in front of him. The Imperial Prestige Spiritual Region that he had built with his own hands, which had been passed down for hundreds of thousands of years, was destroyed. Not only was it destroyed, but it was completely destroyed. All of the disciples were dead. Even if there were fish that escaped the net, they were all being hunted down by the Blood Garment Pavilion's assassins. Moreover, Leng Shiqi had specifically ordered that no traces of the spiritual region could be left behind. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they had to destroy everything. Imperial Prestige Spiritual Region Lord formed a hand seal, and the spiritual region suddenly displayed a realistic scene. It was the scene of the spiritual region's destruction. He finally saw clearly that the one who had done it was the old beggar. You're courting death. Chapter 946. In the Western Wilderness King's Mansion, several reaching heaven states sat together with a heavy expression. Leng Shiqi said bluntly, "Everyone, I've absorbed 4 dragon veins of the falling star continent. Now I'm a walking dragon vein. Although I don't know how to use the power of the dragon veins, the 4 saints care so much about the dragon veins. When they return to the falling star continent, they will definitely come to snatch the dragon veins." Everyone knew that he had obtained all the dragon veins, but no one cared too much. Otherwise, they would have stood out to stop him from the beginning. What they cared more about was the second half of Leng Shiqi's sentence. The 4 saints would return to the falling star continent sooner or later. Because no one would enter the holy city, the 4 saints would not be able to find pawns to use. The only way was to come out personally. Thinking of this, everyone was a little worried, as if there was a sharp sword hanging over their heads all the time. They did not know when it would fall and take their lives. Leng Shiqi continued, "I dare say that the 4 saints will have to pay a great price to leave that space, and the explosion of the vortex last time will consume a lot of their power. So don't worry too much. Even if the 4 saints reappear, their strength will be far less than now. We still have the power to fight them." "It's not that easy. Gru shook his head. Heaven and Earth Tao ancestor also said, the four saints have lived for hundreds of thousands of years. No one knows what trump cards they have. Even if their strength is severely weakened, they are not something we can deal with. What you said is reasonable. Leng Shiqi stood up and said, so we must improve our strength as soon as possible. They immediately sighed in tacit understanding. Gru said, it's not that easy. I've been in the reaching heaven state for thousands of years. There's no possibility for me to improve. The 10 sky demons snorted. It's only been thousands of years. Heaven and Earth Tao ancestor, and I didn't make any progress for more than 20,000 years. Otherwise, we wouldn't have entered the holy city so easily. Leng Shiqi smiled mysteriously. If I say that I have a way to improve your strength in a short time, would you believe me? The 10 sky demons subconsciously wanted to say that they didn't believe it, but they immediately remembered that Leng Shiqi had said something similar in the passage. At that time, Leng Shiqi said that he could take them out, and in the end he really did leave without the four saints knowing. Now that he had said something like this, even the 10-directional holy devil couldn't help but hesitate. Could it be that Leng Shiqi really had a way? To tell you the truth, I have a mysterious secret realm in my hands. There's an extremely powerful inheritance in it. It's very useful even for reaching heaven states and holy spirits. That secret realm is called the underworld. Leng Shiqi briefly explained the existence of the underworld. He also told them that they had relied on the underworld to escape from the four saints. I'm here to invite everyone to join the underworld. However, since you've received something, you'll naturally have to give something in return. Once one joined underworld, it was impossible for them to betray underworld. Otherwise, they would be hunted down by all of underworld's members. Oh right, I forgot to introduce him to everyone. As Leng Shiqi spoke, he pointed at Meng Tianzong. This is not only the palace lord of the Divine Dream Palace 10,000 years ago, but also Meng Po of the underworld. This is the state preceptor of the West State country, and also the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva of the underworld. Only then did everyone realize that Tu Deng and Meng Tianzong had been working together with Leng Shiqi all this time. Meng Tianzong smiled. You must have suspected how I appeared in the passageway before. In fact, the underworld has the ability to connect to space. As long as you join the underworld, even if the four saints come in person, we'll still have the confidence to escape. She had helped Leng Shiqi at a stab. If they joined the underworld, they would be in an invincible position. If they didn't join, then they would have to bear the wrath of the four saints. They were all considering it. They each had their own thoughts, and Leng Shiqi didn't force them. In the end, the old beggar, Gru, was the first to agree. With someone taking the lead, everyone else agreed first. Leng Shiqi laughed and waved his hand to bring everyone into the underworld. Then a series of imperial titles resounded through the world. The Boundless Ghost Emperor of the South Pole, Tao Ancestor Qiankuan. The Devil Emperor of the West Pole. Holy Demon of the 10 Directions. Emperor Song, King of the East Sea. King of Mount Tai Gru. What surprised Leng Shiqi the most was that the Beast Venerable had actually obtained Daiding's inheritance. He had always thought that Daiding was the mount of the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, but he didn't expect that Daiding was also one of the inheritances of the underworld. At this moment, the 5 ghost emperors and the 10 Yama kings had all gathered. It was truly an unprecedented time for the underworld. Damn, they were still accepting the inheritance when the Dharma body of the Luan form king appeared in the distance, but these 2 words appeared. Leng Shiqi knew Oziu's personality. If it wasn't for something major, he wouldn't have lost his composure like this. He must have deduced something extraordinary. Ever since Leng Shiqi left the holy city, he had asked Oziu to find ways to deduce the 4 saints. Even if he could only deduce a little, it would be good. For so long, Oziu had been trying, but he couldn't deduce anything. Instead, he suffered backlash time and time again. Later on, he learned to be smart. He no longer deduced the 4 saints at once, but one by one. Just now, when he was deducing Huangwei Holy Sage, he finally had an idea. But it gave him a big fright. Leng Shiqi asked, "What did you deduce?" Oziu's expression was a little flustered. "Guess what? Huangwei Holy Sage of the 4 saints is already here." What did you say? Hearing this, Leng Shiqi was also shocked. Not long ago, he said that the 4 saints would come out sooner or later, but he didn't expect them to come so soon. Leng Shiqi quickly calmed down. Tell me clearly, are the 4 saints all here, or is it just Huangwei Holy Sage? I can't deduce the other 3 saints at all. I can only deduce Huangwei Holy Sage. He will find this place in the near future. Oziyu replied. Leng Shiqi quietly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, not all 4 of them came out, but only Huangwei Holy Sage. Just as he had said to everyone before, the 4 saints would definitely have to pay a high price to leave that space. Now that only Huangwei Holy Sage had come out, it proved this point. If he could come out so easily, then he wouldn't be the only one. You might be able to deduce the exact time. This. Oziyu revealed a troubled expression. The difference in strength between us is too great, I'm afraid. However, before Oziyu could finish his sentence, Leng Shiqi pressed his palm on his shoulder, and then a trace of the underworld's origin energy entered his body. Suddenly, Oziyu's Will King Dharma idol grew rapidly, and his cultivation broke through to the Tongxian realm. What about now? Leng Shiqi retracted his origin energy and said slowly. Oziyu's jaw was about to drop. What was going on? He broke through with a casual pat? Was he still human? Chapter 947. Oziyu swallowed his saliva. Even though Leng Shiqi had given him too many shocks, he still couldn't help but feel incomparably shocked. After a short while, he finally reacted and said, although there's still a big gap between me and the Huangwei Holy Sovereign, with the support of the underworld's power, I should be able to calculate a more specific time. I'll tell you later. Not long after, Oziyu, who looked exhausted, returned. He said weakly, in about 5 days, Huangwei Holy Sage will come looking for me. 5 days. Leng Shiqi looked at the few people who were still in the inheritance. Within 5 days, they would definitely finish accepting the inheritance, and everyone's overall strength would increase by a huge leap. His mind spun rapidly as he gradually came up with a plan that could possibly kill Huangwei Saint Venerable. 5 days seemed to be very short, but Leng Shiqi had a way to make it very long. He waved his hand lightly, and the origin energy exploded, turning into a gray light that enveloped the few people who were receiving the inheritance. And in this area, the flow of time suddenly slowed down. A breath of time outside was 100 breaths of time inside. Leng Shiqi had slowed down the flow of time by 100 times. In the underworld, he was a god, and changing the flow of time was easy. Therefore, although Huangwei Holy Sage would only be here in 5 days, Leng Shiqi and the others had more than a year to prepare. Leng Shiqi created a clone and sat cross-legged. He also needed time to comprehend more of the power of law, and create the most suitable spirit skill for himself. His clone went out to disperse the people of the Western Wasteland King's mansion, and told the spirit cultivators and ordinary people within a radius of 10,000 miles to move away as soon as possible, so as to avoid any unexpected disasters. 5 days later, Huangwei Holy Sage appeared in the sky above the Western Wasteland King's mansion. His purpose here was to kill Galu, who had destroyed his Huangwei spirit region. It was actually very easy for Huangwei Holy Sage to find Galu's location, and he could also find this place in an extremely short period of time. However, he did not immediately come over because he also needed to recover a certain amount of strength. His saint power was greatly depleted when he came out of the passageway. Originally, he wanted to use the things left behind by the Royal Prestige spiritual region, but unfortunately, the spiritual region was destroyed. He had no choice but to search for some of the resources that had been left behind in the past. However, after hundreds of thousands of years, they had long been taken away by generations of people as opportunities. Huangwei Saint Venerable finally recovered some of his strength and charged into the West Baron King Manor. However, when he arrived, he discovered that there was almost no one within a radius of 10,000 miles. Even in a king's mansion, there was only one person. That person was Leng Shiqi. It's you. Huangwei Holy Sage naturally recognized Leng Shiqi as one of the people from back then. The Royal Majesty Holy Lord is here in person. I am terrified. Leng Shiqi said the word terrified, but there was a smile on his face. Huang Wei's saintly venerate's expression turned cold. Immediately, the world darkened and there seemed to be thunder roaring. I gave you a way to live, but you didn't want to choose a way to die. Leng Shiqi sneered. What way to live? What way to die? I only know that if I'm in the hands of you four so-called human saints, I'll die without a burial place. Since I'm here in person, you're all useless trash. It's a good time to get rid of you rats. Huang Wei's saintly venerable began to exude killing intent. Leng Shiqi tilted his head and extended a finger. Huang Wei's saintly venerable's eyes were filled with killing intent. He clenched his hand and a heavy saint sword appeared. It was named after himself, Huang Wei Saint Sword. The real Huang Wei Saint Sword. He had only left behind a replica saint sword for his descendants. Although it was also a saint weapon, his sword had been nurtured for hundreds of thousands of years. It had long surpassed the category of a saint weapon. The royal might sacred sword fell. This sword seemed ordinary, but it had already abandoned all sword moves and returned to its original state. It was only until the moment the sword fell that it exploded with a powerful might that was enough to split mountains and break rivers. His sword move, engulfing mountains and rivers, was incomparably majestic. It was also an extremely domineering sword move. That kind of domineering was unlike Xiaoba's wild and unrestrained style. But it was the domineering aura of an emperor who ruled over the world. It was as if under this sword, both gods and ghosts would be torn apart. The sharp aura from the saint sword made Leng Shiqi feel pain all over his body. Hellish flames rose around him. At the same time, his body completely disappeared. The saint sword fell and created a large vacuum in the hellish flames. However, Huang Wei's saintly venerable felt that he did not hit Leng Shiqi at all. He scanned with his divine sense and tried his best to sense. However, Leng Shiqi's body had really disappeared. Only the hellish flames proved that Leng Shiqi was still here, turning into 10,000 flames. This is something that only a saint spirit expert who has comprehended the law of fire to the extreme can do. However, even a saint spirit expert cannot stop me. Huang Wei saintly venerable raised his saint sword. Saint light shot into the sky. A 10,000 feet long saint dragon appeared behind him. It was very lifelike. The dragon's roar was filled with endless saint aura and killing intent. The strange thing was that the sacred dragon's eyes were emitting a dense blood-red color. As he slashed out with his sword, it was as if all laws had been extinguished. The netherworld flames were all extinguished, and Leng Shiqi's figure was also forced out in a sorry state. He suddenly swung his sword. The void cracked. The sword transformed into the three realms of gods, demons and Buddhas. What was different from before was that the three different sword techniques actually split the world. Leng Shiqi had also integrated the law of space into the three realms. The power of the three realms suppressed the saint dragon. The sword technique slashed the body, heart and soul. The strange sword technique clashed head-on with Huang Wei saintly venerable's saint sword. Within 1,000 miles, the space was cracked. The powerful sword and saber chi were exploding. Even Sky Origin stage cultivators would be torn into pieces if they got too close to the fight. During the fight, Leng Shiqi flipped his left hand. A shocking sword intent surged out. The Emperor of Fengdu's Dharma form appeared behind him. As the sword slashed down, all the powers in the world were melted away. The sword of reincarnation slashed at the Saint Dragon. The power of reincarnation exploded and instantly cut off a part of the Saint Dragon's body. This caused Huang Wei saintly venerable's sword intent to weaken. Boom! After a loud explosion, the void cracked. Leng Shiqi and Huang Wei saintly venerable both retreated. Huang Wei saintly venerable retreated a few feet. However, Leng Shiqi flew a few hundred feet away. He had to use 2 moves to barely block Huang Wei saintly venerable's sword. He was even forced to retreat so far. Leng Shiqi had lost the fight. However, Huang Wei saintly venerable's face darkened. Although his saint power was greatly damaged, he could only maintain his saint spirit realm. However, his accumulation over hundreds of thousands of years was unparalleled. Even if he were to fight a saint spirit expert in his peak state, he would not be at a disadvantage. However, he could not hurt Leng Shiqi even after using 2 moves. Chapter 948. What surprised him even more was that not only did Leng Shiqi cultivate the law of fire, but he also cultivated the law of space and the law of reincarnation. Huang Wei saintly sage had come to kill Gru, but instead of Gru, he found Leng Shiqi. He had never seen Leng Shiqi in action before, so he did not know anything about Leng Shiqi. Of course, he did not bother to search for information about Leng Shiqi in advance. In his opinion, no one in the Falling Star continent was worthy of his effort. However, Leng Shiqi made him feel that it was a little tricky. Leng Shiqi was not a saint spirit elite, and he did not have any saint energy or saint soul. However, his comprehension of the law of fire had reached a terrifying level, far beyond the ascension realm. Huang Wei saintly sage's strength had been greatly reduced, and he had many important things to do. If he wanted to kill Leng Shiqi, he would need to consume a large amount of saint energy, which made him hesitate. However, he quickly threw that hesitation to the back of his mind. If he could not kill a mere Leng Shiqi, he would be utterly humiliated. Suddenly, Huang Wei saintly saint's body shone with red light. Red runes bloomed and covered his body like armor. Even the saintly dragon behind him was the same. Then a glorious, majestic, and evil aura spread out. As the sword slashed down, the saint dragon roared. However, it was not an angry roar, but a mournful cry. Huang Wei saintly sage's sword shattered heaven and earth, and the sword split the world. The terrifying sword intent was so real that it made people despair. Leng Shiqi closed his eyes. The next moment, the 6 paths of reincarnation appeared behind him. With a thought, the 6 paths of reincarnation turned into 6 realms. Heaven realm, human realm, Shura realm, hungry ghost realm, animal realm, and hell realm. The power of the 6 realms rotated, and the power of the 6 realms exploded, causing the space to shatter and everything to be destroyed. Leng Shiqi merged the law of reincarnation and the law of space into one. It was a powerful spiritual technique, created by combining the power of reincarnation and the power of space. World of 6 paths of reincarnation. When the two of them collided, the powerful force immediately exploded the void, even causing the entire space to tremble. It turned into a boundless origin chi storm that swept out for thousands of miles. This scene was simply like the end of the world. Just as the two of them were exchanging blows, several figures forcibly withstood the terrifying shockwaves and strangely appeared in the surroundings. These people were all dressed in luxurious black and gold robes, and wore masks of various shapes and sizes. Their bodies surged with the aura of death. They were none other than the ghost emperors of the underworld, and the Yama kings of the 10 palaces. The leaders were Tao ancestor Qiankuan and the 10 sky demons, the strongest few. They did not appear to fight wholly venerate Huang Wei head-on. Instead, they formed seals with their hands. Boundless netherworld chi permeated the heaven and earth, and a heaven-reaching gate to the underworld was summoned by them. Immediately after, an extremely powerful suction force surged out from the gate of the underworld. It even formed many huge arms that wanted to pull Huang Wei saintly sage in. Humph! How dare these losers and weaklings threaten me? Huang Wei saintly sage sneered when he saw Tao ancestor Qiankuan, Meng Tianzong, and the others suddenly appear. With a gentle wave of the sacred sword, all the arms were cut off. However, in this short moment, Leng Shiqi's body was covered with colorful threads. In the blink of an eye, those dazzling threads weaved into a huge net that covered the sky and slowly fell. Huang Wei saintly sage could not help but be shocked when he saw this. He immediately stopped looking down on Leng Shiqi, because every thread was a thread of law. The appearance of the net of law meant that Leng Shiqi had almost mastered all the laws of heaven and earth in the world. How was this possible? A sword chime sounded. Huang Wei saintly sage swung the sacred sword in his hand. This sword tore through space and time, shattering the sky and earth. In just an instant, the net of law weaved by Leng Shiqi was broken in less than 2 breaths. Leng Shiqi did not care about the net of law at all. That was just a lie. Then he forced his way into Huang Wei saintly sage's sword realm. His body was immediately covered in blood, and his meridians were all broken. His skin was burned by the sacred power, revealing his white bones. Even so, he did not care. His body suddenly flashed and he crossed space and grabbed Huang Wei saintly sage. The suction force of the gate of the dead behind him grew stronger, and countless gray hands extended out. Are you crazy? You're courting death. Huangwei Saintly Sage felt a strong sense of uneasiness. He swung his sacred sword and was about to kill Leng Shiqi. However, at this moment, Leng Shiqi's eyes were burning with blood-red flames. He started to burn his blood essence and even his divine soul. Immediately, the space between heaven and earth froze. An invisible power of law suddenly appeared. Huangwei Saintly Sage realized that the time around him seemed to have frozen. He could not even blink his eyes. It was to the extent that his thoughts were frozen at this moment. Time law. Time stop. Swoosh. Using this opportunity, Huangwei Saintly Sage was dragged into the gate of the dead by Leng Shiqi. Huangwei Saintly Sage felt that he was being eroded by endless netherworld energy. He spread out his divine consciousness, but realized that it stopped after spreading out for a few miles. Not only that, but the sacred power in his body was rapidly dissipating. He could not even sense the power of law. He was shocked. What is this place? Leng Shiqi transformed into the Emperor of Fengdu and said coldly, "Welcome to my world." The 5 ghost emperors and the 10 kings of hell appeared. Waves of cold and terrifying netherworld energy surged and shrouded Huangwei Saintly Sage. At this moment, Huangwei Saintly Sage was shocked. The aura of these people who suddenly appeared in front of him was comparable to that of a sacred spirit expert. On the other hand, he could not sense any power of law at all. This caused the sacred power in his body to dissipate at an unbelievable speed. Most importantly, his physical body was not his own. It was stolen. In the blink of an eye, it turned into ashes. Only a weak sacred soul was left. Those towering Dharma idols stared at Huangwei Saintly Sage's sacred soul. Their eyes shone with a terrifying green light. They were like hungry wolves that saw prey that could not move. In just a few seconds, Huangwei Saintly Sage turned from a sacred spirit expert who had dominated the falling star continent for hundreds of thousands of years to a soul that could be slaughtered at any time. Just this change in mentality was hard for him to accept. However, he had no choice but to accept this reality. This is not the falling star continent, nor is it the middle realm. Who are you? Huangwei Saintly Sage realized that he had inexplicably walked to the edge of death. He exclaimed, "Don't kill me, don't kill me. I know many secrets of heaven and earth. I know countless opportunities and countless cultivation techniques and spiritual techniques. You must still want to deal with 6 Unity Saintly Sage and the others. I can tell you their weaknesses. I'm still very useful." An absolute sage of the human race was actually begging for mercy. Chapter 949. Leng Shiqi transformed into the image of the Emperor of Fengdu and exuded a murderous aura. The dignified Huangwei Heavenly Venerate has such an attitude. How is he different from an ordinary person? Then he opened his mouth and said, "Die." Huangwei Heavenly Venerate's expression froze, and his saint soul dimmed. Leng Shiqi's words were law, and he easily took away Huangwei Heavenly Venerate's life. A Heavenly Venerate had fallen just like that. Leng Shiqi kept Huangwei Heavenly Venerate's saint soul. What Huangwei Heavenly Venerate had said had tempted Leng Shiqi, but as long as he had Huangwei Heavenly Venerate's saint soul in his hands, he would know everything. When the others saw Huangwei Heavenly Venerate die just like that, they were in disbelief. Especially Tao Ancestor Qian Kuan and 10-directional Holy Demon, who had almost died. They had fought with the 4 saints before, and they knew how terrifying they were. However, the insufferably arrogant Huangwei Heavenly Venerate had died in front of them. Moreover, Huangwei Heavenly Venerate's attitude before he died made everyone understand that Heavenly Venerate and Absolute Saint were no different from ordinary people in the face of death. The reverence in his heart had also disappeared. Leng Shiqi said, "The most difficult part of this battle is not fighting Huangwei Heavenly Venerate head-on, but how to drag him into the mansion of hell. As you can see, in the mansion of hell, your strength is comparable to a Holy Spirit expert. However, if an outsider enters, he will lose all his strength like Huangwei Heavenly Venerate, and he will be at our mercy. Therefore, the 4 saints have nothing to be afraid of. Even if Luoing Heavenly Venerate, 6 Unity Heavenly Venerate, and Martial Extremity, Heavenly Venerate come at the same time, we still have a chance of winning." Killing Huangwei Holy Venerate could be considered as a reassurance pill for everyone to eat. You have not fully comprehended the inheritance of the mansion of hell. Before the other 3 heavenly venerates appear, hurry up and increase your strength. The stronger we are, the more confident we will be. Everyone felt deeply moved, and they immediately dispersed to cultivate. Leng Shiqi took Huangwei Heavenly Venerate's saint soul, and walked into the Fengdu Imperial Palace. He first spent some time recuperating from his injuries. His injuries were actually very serious. If he had been in the outside world, he would have needed decades to recover. However, in the underworld, he had only needed a few hours to fully recover from his injuries. Taking out Huangwei Holy Sovereign's saint soul, Leng Shiqi tapped it lightly with his finger. Immediately, countless memories turned into images and scattered in all directions. Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed as he quickly scanned through Huangwei's memories. He finally found the secret of the 4 saints. In the passageway, most of the information that sacred sovereign Wu Ji had told them was true. However, there were 2 things that he had lied about. First of all, the 4 saints had actually been possessed long ago. They knew that the outside world was barren of spiritual energy, and had even been stripped of the recognition of the heavens and earth. When the first Holy Spirit Master entered that place, they were already possessed. They immediately killed that Holy Spirit Master, and devoured all the Holy Spirit Master's Holy Spirit Master. There was another point. The main reason why the 4 saints did not return to the Falling Star continent was not to protect the human race, nor was it to seal the whirlpool. It was because the Star Tribe had tampered with that passageway. It was not that the Star Tribe did not guard against the human tribe, especially the passageway that concerned the entire tribe. They had set up a secret formation in the passageway. Everyone could enter, but other than those who had the bloodline of the Star Tribe, no one could leave, unless one had the power to destroy all the arrays. Actually, with the 4 saints' strength, they stood a chance. Unfortunately, the Star Tribe's array was completely targeted at the human race. As long as they came into contact with the array, their Holy Spirit Master would be continuously absorbed. Not only would they lose their Holy Spirit Master, but they would also strengthen the array. Therefore, the 4 saints had been accumulating their Holy Spirit Master for a long time. They wanted to break through the array, and even refine the Falling Star continent to transcend the Middle Element world. To refine the Falling Star continent, they did not only need to absorb all the spiritual energy on the continent, but also all the living creatures. They wanted to sacrifice all the living creatures on the continent to provide them with power. Leng Shiqi was right. The 4 saints wanted to destroy the Falling Star continent. Most importantly, Leng Shiqi knew that the 4 saints were not so united and harmonious. They had joined forces because they had the same goal. However, the spiritual energy on the Falling Star continent was not very abundant. Could it really support the 4 of them to transcend? If they were alone, the chances of success would be much higher. Therefore, the 4 saints had always been scheming against each other. It was just that they had never revealed it. This time, Huangwei the Holy Sage came out alone for his own selfish reasons. The 4 saints had agreed that each of them would take 1 dragon's vein. His purpose was to monopolize all 4 dragons' veins. When he gathered the world's chi, the other 3 would not be able to do anything. Unfortunately, before he could find the dragon's veins, he had already fallen here. In addition, what shocked Leng Shiqi the most was that after hundreds of thousands of years, the 4 saints had actually comprehended a set of skills that could allow them to avoid the heaven's death tribulation and directly become a saint. Avoid the heavenly tribulation? Suddenly, Leng Shiqi thought of a person, or rather a ghost. He stretched out his hand and beast ghost Shuozhou appeared beside him. Back then, Shuozhou ran to the demon miasma mountain range, and used a secret method to make the demon Sable and Star and Moon Heavenly Winged Tiger become rank 7 great monsters without passing the heavenly tribulation. Even if there were some hidden dangers after the advancement, they were still rank 7 great monsters. At first, Leng Shiqi did not care much about the secret method. It was not until the Beast Venerable also took a fancy to the secret method that he began to pay attention to it. It was a pity that his later experiences were too complicated. He did not have the time and energy to study the secret method, so he put it aside. Now that he had seen the secret method that the four saints had researched, he remembered that Zhuozhou had done something similar. He wanted Zhuozhou's secret method. It did not matter at first glance. He found that Zhuozhou and the four saints' secret method were actually similar. Leng Shiqi could not help but look up to Zhuozhou. A Sky Origin Realm spirit cultivator was actually able to create such a miraculous secret method. The key point of this secret method was to avoid touching the power of heaven and earth. For example, Leng Shiqi's world extermination force was a powerful force that could directly trigger the will of heaven and earth. But if the world extermination force was transformed, its essence would still be the world extermination force, but the aura it emitted would be different. This way, it could avoid the will of heaven and earth. It could be said that it was an opportunistic method that was very difficult to achieve. But once it was done, Leng Shiqi would have a chance to avoid the Heavenly Slayer tribulation and directly become a saint. In the end, he swallowed Huangwei Saint Venerable's saint soul in one gulp. Just as Leng Shiqi began to plan for himself, in the passage, 6 Unity Saint Venerable, Extreme Martial Saint Venerable and Luoying Saint Venerable's faces were gloomy. The surrounding cold air was almost able to freeze the space. Huangwei has fallen. Unbelievable. We have been forced into a desperate situation. It is time to make a decision. Extreme Martial Saint Venerable said resolutely. The other two understood what Extreme Martial Saint Venerable meant. The only way out was to personally go to the Falling Star continent. Chapter 950. They had no other chances. With the vortex erupting more frequently, they did not have enough time and strength. They could only finish everything before the next vortex erupts. Saint Master Wuji's Saint Power surged, and his fighting spirit soared. Let's go. The 3 saints of the Falling Star continent were about to descend. A few days later, in the Mansion of the Dead. Have you really made up your mind? Dao ancestor Qianquan stood beside Leng Shiqi and asked. At this time, he had already refined Saint Master Huangwei's Saint Soul, and his cultivation was only a step away from becoming a Saint Spirit Master. He nodded and said, "This is the only way. A little carelessness and you will be crushed. Won't you regret it? I don't have a choice, do I? Haha, it's good to be young. Forget it, I'll go crazy with you this time." After Dao ancestor Qianquan finished speaking, a strong saint light rose from his body, and then all the saint light poured into Leng Shiqi's body. This is all I have left. Since I've taken the wrong path, it's better to start all over again. Your plan may have a chance of success. You've refined Saint Master Huangwei's Saint Soul, but it won't work if you never master real saint power. Leng Shiqi closed his eyes slightly, and carefully felt the majestic saint power in his body. It was indeed different from all the powers he had mastered. With this power, his plan would definitely be much smoother. I can't repay this kindness. If you can really go against the heavens, it will be a great benefit for me. This saint power is nothing. While speaking, Leng Shiqi's expression suddenly became serious. He said, King Luanzhuan has found the other 3 saint masters. They've come out. So fast. Dao ancestor Qianquan's expression also became serious. Their primary goal must be the dragon vein. In order to not harm the world, we can only fight them at the pole of the East Sea. How's the King of the East Sea's arrangement? All the formation masters in the world are there, using the world's best materials and the power of several Ascension Realm cultivators. Coupled with the power of the Mansion of the Dead, it can definitely pose a threat to the 4 saints. Unfortunately, it can only be used once, Dao ancestor Qianquan replied. That's enough. After that, Leng Shiqi brought everyone from the underworld to the East Sea. After setting everything up, everyone entered the underworld and cultivated under the slowed down time, waiting for the 3 absolute saints to arrive. After the 3 saints returned to the Falling Star continent, they first went to the spirit realm that they had created, just like the Royal Might Sacred Sovereign, and the result was just as shocked and angry as the Royal Might Sacred Sovereign. Then, the 3 of them went to the dragon veins of the previous 3 dynasties, only to find that the 3 dragon veins were long gone. The 4 of them were extremely furious, but they didn't go on a killing spree. They didn't even alarm anyone, because those people were about to be refined in their eyes. In the end, just as Leng Shiqi expected, they came to the end of the Eastern Sea together to search for the last dragon vein. Here they met the Leng Shiqi. Seeing the three saints, Leng Shiqi wasn't afraid at all. He smiled brightly and said, "I've been waiting for you three for a long time." The moment the three saints saw Leng Shiqi, they felt the aura of the Royal Might Sacred Sovereign's saint soul on him, and their expressions turned cold. Luoying Spirit Sovereign said with murderous intent, "You killed Royal Might Sacred Sovereign?" "It doesn't matter." Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "Do you want to avenge the Royal Might Sacred Sovereign? Forgive me, but the death of the Royal Might Sacred Sovereign means that there's one less person to share the remaining power of the falling star continent. I'm helping you, aren't I?" "Nonsense." Six Unity Holy Sovereign immediately shouted. "The four of us are like one. Today, I'll kill this little bastard to relieve the hatred in my heart." "Ha ha ha, that's right. Kill me and you can take back the power of the dragon veins. However, I have 4 dragon veins in my body. How are the 3 of you going to split them?" "You." Six Unity Holy Sovereign was about to speak. Suddenly, 9 blazing suns rose into the sky. Purple aura shone from the east, and the array set up by the Luoying Spirit Sovereign was melted by the 9 blazing suns. "Who is it?" Luoying Spirit Sovereign asked in surprise. Even though she had lost a lot of her power, only a genuine Holy Spirit Master would be able to break through the formation she had set up so easily. However, there was no such person in the world. Leng Shiqi also felt strange. He turned his head and saw a figure walking out of the blazing suns. He looked both familiar and unfamiliar. From his appearance, that person was the Pure Yang Sacred Master. After they left the Holy City, they didn't go with Leng Shiqi and the others. Instead, they left alone. However, the aura emitted by the Pure Yang Sacred Master, and his eyes told Leng Shiqi that he was no longer the Pure Yang Sacred Master of the past. The power of the sacred light that overflowed with a wave of his hand was not much weaker than that of the 4 sacred sovereigns. Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth suddenly said, "No wonder I felt a sense of familiarity when I first saw him. He's a sacred sovereign tens of thousands of years before me and the 10-directional Holy Devil, the supreme sage of the 9 suns." The 10-directional Holy Devil looked at him for a while and suddenly said, "I understand now. What a supreme sage of the 9 suns. I guess he left a backup plan before he entered the Holy City. He kept a part of his sacred soul, sacred power, and memories because he was afraid that something would happen to him." The one who entered the Holy City not long ago was probably the remnant of his soul. He obtained his original physical body inside, and used the sacred power that he accumulated for 200,000 years to become who he is today. He's cautious and patient enough. Leng Shiqi also remembered that after they entered the space tunnel, the Pure Yang Sacred Master had indeed taken away a sacred sovereign's corpse. So that was his original physical body. No, he was no longer the Pure Yang Sacred Master. He was the supreme sage of the 9 suns. And now, it seemed that the Pure Yang Holy Temple was built with the remnant power that the supreme sage of the 9 suns left behind. It had been accumulating power for a long time until the Holy City appeared. "You killed me once in the past. Let's see if you can kill me again." The supreme sage of the 9 suns burned like fire, but his words were as cold as ice. The 3 sacred sovereigns felt that they were in trouble. Judging from the supreme sage of the 9 suns aura, his power was no different from that of an ordinary sacred sovereign. For so many years, he had not used his sacred power, and had been accumulating it. On the other hand, the 3 sacred sovereigns had less than a tenth of their sacred power left. Even if they were confident that they could defeat the supreme sage of the 9 suns, it would greatly deplete their power. In this way, it would be difficult to complete their plan, not to mention transcending this world. However, the supreme sage of the 9 suns waved his hand, and attacked the Luoying saint with the terrifying power of the sun. Back then, it was the Luoying saint who had killed him. "If I can kill you once, I can naturally kill you a second time." The Luoying saint's hands were like a fairy scattering petals as she performed countless spiritual spells. Cherry blossoms rained down from the sky, and looked like they were going to destroy the 9 blazing suns. Just like that, the two powerful beings began to fight. Chapter 951. Spirit Venerable Luo Ying was being held back by Supreme Sage Nine Sons. Holy Venerable Wu Ji and Holy Venerable Six Directions could not be bothered to waste any more time. They knew that the longer they dragged on, the more problems would arise. Now it was better to kill Leng Shiqi first and retrieve the power of the dragon vein. Holy Venerable Six Directions formed a seal with his hands, and an endless void appeared in the sky. As the heavens evolved, 6 holy statues that emitted a brilliant holy aura slowly descended. The space seemed to be unable to withstand that power, and it was squeezed until it emitted a strange sound. This was the holy statue of 6 directions, the real holy statue of 6 directions. Holy Venerable Six Directions pointed with his finger, and each of the holy statues did the same. Suddenly, 7 lightning-like finger forces intersected with each other and cut through heaven and earth as they charged toward Leng Shiqi. However, Leng Shiqi's body mysteriously disappeared. Then, the space behind Holy Venerable Six Directions rippled, and Leng Shiqi's arm reached out from the void. A purple light flashed, and Holy Venerable Six Directions spat out 3 feet of blood. His right arm was even broken. The holy statue of 6 Directions collapsed. With just one attack, Holy Venerable Six Directions was severely injured. True Essence Flash. This was a strange move that Leng Shiqi had specially exchanged from the system. The stronger the opponent, the more damage he would suffer. This was the power of law from another world. With just one attack, he had severely injured Holy Venerable Six Directions. Holy Venerable Six Directions was shocked. He had been severely injured before the battle had even begun. How could Leng Shiqi be so strong? However, he never expected that a formless and terrifying power would suddenly surge around Leng Shiqi. It was formless and formless, but it was filled with a dangerous aura. With a gentle wave of his hand, heaven and earth froze. Everything came to a standstill. Spiritual energy, laws, aura, everything was frozen in this moment. Leng Shiqi waved his hand again, and a terrifying power that could destroy the world tore through the void. With Holy Venerable Six Directions as the center, the space within a 100-mile radius directly collapsed. Boundless spatial turbulence engulfed Holy Master Six Unity. Even though he had already broken free from the shackles of time, his body was still covered in bloody wounds. He was quite injured. In the end, Leng Shiqi waved his hands and smoothed out the collapsed space, completely banishing Holy Master Six Unity into the turbulent flow of space. As for what would happen to him, there was only death. No matter how powerful a Holy Spirit Master was, they would not be able to survive in the turbulent flow of space. Perhaps he could hold on for a while, but he couldn't hold on for a lifetime. The Leng Shiqi had suddenly erupted and killed Holy Venerate Six Unity in just 2 breaths. This was something that no one had expected. That was one of the absolute saints of the human race, Holy Sage Six Directions. How could he have died just like that? Also, no matter how strong Leng Shiqi is, he can't be this strong. Sacred Supremacy Martial Extremity was even more alarmed. He knew very well that Sacred Supremacy Six Unity still had many trump cards he had yet to use. Yet he had been exiled just like that. Furthermore, he had never seen the power that Leng Shiqi had unleashed before. It could directly cause space to collapse, but it wasn't spatial laws. Leng Shiqi had indeed not used spatial laws, but the power of destruction. The various origins powers of a world would eventually evolve into 2 types of powers. One was the power of creation, and the other was the power of destruction. A long time ago, Leng Shiqi had attempted to fuse the various origins powers, but unfortunately he had failed. If he succeeded, perhaps he would be able to comprehend the power of creation. In the Ashen world, he had comprehended the power of destruction by chance. It was also there that he attracted the Heavenly Slayer Tribulation. After a long period of meditation and the augmentation of the underworld's power, the power of destruction now definitely had the destructive power of destruction. It had directly killed Holy Venerate Six Unity in one strike. With his absolute strength, killing one of the 4 saints before they could unleash their full strength was something that Leng Shiqi had planned for a long time. No matter how long he had prepared, It was impossible for him to have prepared for longer than the 4 saints. No matter how prepared he could not compare to the 4 saints who had accumulated strength for hundreds of thousands of years. If they were to fight slowly, no matter how many trump cards Leng Shiqi had, he would not have much confidence in winning. Therefore he had to end the battle quickly. As for who to kill first, it would depend on who made the first move. Generally speaking, when the other party saw you as a true opponent, the first person to attack would not use their full strength. Instead, they would test the waters first. This was not only the habit of the 4 saints, but also the habit of all experts. This was because the more powerful a spirit cultivator was, the more they knew that they could not be easily injured. Therefore, when they fought, they would first test each other and roughly understand each other's strength before deciding whether to fight to the death or something else. Leng Shiqi had grasped this habit of not being noticed by others and had inconceivably killed Holy Venerate 6 Unity. However, in this way he had consumed a lot of energy and had used the power of destruction. It was very likely that it would attract the attention of the will of the heavens and earth. He did not care, as long as he could kill one person first and make his plan go smoothly. Holy Venerate Wu Ji no longer hesitated. He took a step forward and punched out. In an instant, space trembled and the heavens and earth split open. Leng Shiqi's body blossomed with Buddhist light and devil chi rose. Other than that, there was also a boundless amount of Tao energy. The 3 completely different powers of Buddhism, Tao, and devil were perfectly combined in his body. He held up the sky with both hands and forcefully resisted the fist that shook the heavens. However, he was only sent flying a distance away, and was not injured at all. Holy Venerate Wu Ji frowned. Devil arts were relatively common, and there was also Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth. However, the Tao energy that Leng Shiqi displayed was completely different from that of Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth. There was also that Buddhist light, which was a strange power that Holy Venerate Wu Ji had never seen before. He boasted that he had cultivated all kinds of arts in the world, but he had never seen such a spiritual aura. Holy Venerate Wu Ji's fingers were like a sword, and his body was like a sharp longsword. He used his body as a sword to cut through the void, and his terrifying holy aura made the heavens and earth pale. He did not have a sword in his hand, but an endless amount of sword will soared into the sky. He was not a pure sword cultivator like Chen Xian, nor was he as domineering as Holy Venerate Huang Wei. He only had the simplest sword will, but the simpler it was, the stronger it was in his hands. The Emperor of Fengdu's Dharma idol shadow appeared behind Leng Shiqi, and the power of reincarnation erupted, rotating all the power in the world. The terrifying sword will was infinitely weakened. When it reached Leng Shiqi, it was already thousands of times weaker. Countless reincarnation sword shadows easily shattered it. After devouring Holy Venerate Huang Wei's saint soul, and obtaining Tao Ancestor Heaven and Earth's saint power, Leng Shiqi's power had undergone a fundamental change. In addition, he had comprehended the law of reincarnation to the extreme. He was actually not at a disadvantage when fighting with Holy Venerate Wu Ji. Even though Holy Venerate Wu Ji's strength was only 1/10 of his original, it was still shocking enough. Holy Venerate Wu Ji was even more shocked when he could not do anything to Leng Shiqi. At the same time, he knew that he could not delay any longer. Even though Holy Venerate 6 Unity's death was actually beneficial to him, Leng Shiqi was too big of a variable. He had to kill him. Chapter 952. Martial Saint Sovereign punched out again. At this moment, a dragon's roar could be heard in mid-air. A divine dragon that was extremely similar to Martial Saint Sovereign rushed into the 9 heavens. He himself was also above the 9 heavens. His body was straight like a dragon spear. His punch was the tip of the spear. When the spear fell, it pierced through the heavens. This was both a punch and a spear. The fist and the spear had merged into one. Leng Shiqi had finally accumulated enough power. A Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram suddenly appeared, flashing with the majestic power of Yin and Yang. At the same time, the 6 paths of reincarnation appeared, forming 6 realms that revolved around the Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram. At this moment, time and space froze. It was as if there were only the Tai Chi Yin-Yang diagram in the world. Everything else seemed to have been hidden in the void. Behind him, shadows of the master of Samsara, the Huang Heaven Demon Emperor, the Nether Holy Lord, and the others appeared. He had already unleashed the power of the law of Samsara to the limit. He had also merged the power of yin and yang, the power of Samsara, the power of space, and even the power of time into one. The three supreme laws combined with the power of yin and yang could create and destroy the world. It was also at this moment that a huge formation that spanned a few hundred kilometers appeared. It contained an explosive power. The formation had several formation cores, and each formation core contained a supreme treasure. For example, the Thunderfire Dynasty's supreme treasure, the Thunderfire Heavenly Pearl, and the Starfall Dynasty's supreme treasure, the Stellar Divine Stone at the center of the formation, Dao Ancestor Qianquan, the 10 Sky Fiends, Tu Deng, Meng Tianzong, and the other experts activated the formation at the same time. All of their power gathered into a sharp arrow. This arrow was only as thick as a finger. It shone with all kinds of colors, and was very dazzling. The arrow locked onto Martial Saint Sovereign. At this moment he actually felt a trace of threat. When Sovereign Beast saw the Huang Heaven Demon Emperor appear behind Lung Shiqi, his expression changed. At the same time he seemed to understand something. The arrow that gathered all of the strongest power in the Starfall continent suddenly shot out. It directly pierced through space, leaving a pitch-black spatial crack in the air as it shot towards Martial Saint Sovereign with boundless power. At the same time he had to face the Lung Shiqi's powerful origin energy, and be wary of that arrow. Saint Venerable Wu Ji's blood boiled, and his veins popped out. Holy light stained with blood soared into the sky. A Dharma idol that towered into the clouds appeared behind him. The Dharma idol was actually his own appearance. Saint Venerable Wu Ji didn't believe in heaven, earth, or gods and devils. He only believed in himself. The avatar raised its hands to the sky, intending to tear the sky apart. The power that was strong enough to split the sky instantly shattered the arrow that had gathered all the power of the falling star continent. Even Lung Shiqi's Tai Chi diagram was on the verge of collapse. However, the corners of Lung Shiqi's mouth curled into a triumphant smile. What he wanted was for Saint Venerable Wuji to unleash his full strength, because after that, Saint Venerable Wuji would definitely be in a relatively weak state. His body flickered, and another Lung Shiqi stepped out. This was not his avatar, but his past self. The past Lung Shiqi directly summoned the gate of the underworld, and countless giant gray hands pulled at Saint Venerable Wuji from behind. Saint Venerable Wuji, who was suppressing the Tai Chi diagram with all his strength, didn't expect Lung Shiqi to have such a strange method. What was even more strange was that the holy power around him didn't affect those giant gray hands at all. It was as if the two of them didn't exist in the same world. He was wrong. It should be said that they didn't exist in the same time. No matter how strong Saint Venerable Wuji's power was, it was still the power of the present. Those giant hands came from the past. What was even stranger was that those giant hands didn't pull away Saint Venerable Wuji's body, but his saint soul. Ah! Saint Venerable Wuji screamed as his saint soul was forcefully taken away. After losing his saint soul, his aura suddenly plummeted. His holy power continued to leak out. In just a breath's time, he fell to the Ascension realm, and continued to weaken. The 10-directional holy demon's demonic aura surged as he laughed loudly. Old Wuji, to think that you would have such a day. Then several Ascension realm cultivators rushed forward. In just a few moves, Saint Venerable Wuji died. 2 absolute saints died one after another. On the other side, Luoying, who was still fighting with the Supreme Sage of the 9 Suns, felt a chill run down her spine. Especially with Lung Shiqi's strange ability, she didn't have the confidence to resist. The Supreme Sage of the 9 Suns in front of her was only slightly weaker than her. If Lung Shiqi and the others joined in, she would probably die here today. However, all of the dragon veins were in Lung Shiqi's body. If she retreated, there would be no possibility of her transcendence. However, Lung Shiqi's gaze was already locked onto her. In front of Luoying, he directly swallowed the holy souls of Saint Venerable Six Unity and Saint Venerable Wuji. His entire body was enveloped in a dense holy light, and his aura suddenly skyrocketed. Luoying was shocked. She didn't want the dragon veins. She had to temporarily avoid them. Unfortunately, the supreme sage of the 9 suns had turned into absolute yang and blocked all of her escape routes. Under the combined efforts of Leng Shiqi and the supreme sage of the 9 suns, Luoying had fallen. At this point, the 4 absolute saints of the human race had all fallen. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, they were deeply shocked by Leng Shiqi. They had actually killed the 4 absolute saints, especially the 10 heavenly demons, Tao ancestor Qianquan, and the supreme sage of the 9 suns. They had all been killed by the 4 absolute saints. Now that they had gotten revenge, they were really happy. Leng Shiqi didn't look happy. He continued to swallow Luo Ying's holy soul, and the holy light around his body seemed to solidify. Immediately after, his divine soul suddenly left his body and quietly turned into the color of the holy gold in front of everyone's eyes. That was a holy soul that only a Holy Spirit Master could have. That's right. Leng Shiqi's goal wasn't to kill the 4 absolute saints, but to steal their holy power and ignore the will of heaven and earth to forcefully become a saint. He had done it. However, this action would definitely attract the attention of the will of heaven and earth. It was very likely that it would directly come to the falling star continent. That was not the heavenly death tribulation. It was the true will of heaven and earth. The calamity of Heavenly Slayer was only a small part of the will of heaven and earth. Back then, Leng Shiqi couldn't resist at all, and was killed by the calamity of Heavenly Slayer. Now he had to face the will of heaven and earth. Thousands of miles away, the 10 heavenly demons just smiled happily. The 4 absolute saints that had almost killed him were finally dead. However, in the next moment his smile froze. What was Leng Shiqi trying to do? He was actually forcefully becoming a saint. Leng Shiqi, are you crazy? Forcefully becoming a saint will only attract the will of heaven and earth. When that time comes, only death will await you, and you will also implicate us. The 10 heavenly demons roared in horror. Leng Shiqi ignored the 10 heavenly demons, but Tao ancestor Qianquan said, "Can't you see? Leng Shiqi's goal wasn't the 4 absolute saints from the beginning, but the will of heaven and earth. He did this to attract the will of heaven and earth, and then destroy the heavens." Destroy the heavens? The 10 heavenly demons felt that they were hearing things. "Qianquan, that kid is crazy. Are you crazy too? 10 heavenly demons, you have been to the underworld before. You should know how mysterious and powerful it is. As the master of the underworld, Leng Shiqi has power that you and I can't imagine. Let's see if he can defy the heavens." Chapter 953. An inexplicable sound suddenly appeared in the sky. Immediately after, everyone who heard the sound felt their consciousness being greatly damaged. Immediately after, no one dared to stay any longer and retreated tens of thousands of miles away as quickly as they could. When they looked up again, they actually had the illusion that the sky seemed to have lowered. It should be said that it was getting lower and lower, as if it was about to press down on the ground. They knew that the sky had descended. Leng Shiqi looked up at the sky. This moment had finally arrived. He had forcefully become a sage, and even used the power of destruction in order to draw out the will of the world. Although he had used up all his strength to kill the 3 sages, and his current state was very poor, fighting against people and fighting against the heavens was different. He had prepared more things for the will of the world. An illusory figure appeared in the sky. As soon as he appeared, the world changed color, and thousands of laws returned to him. He was the will of the world. Previously, Leng Shiqi had only seen one of his eyes during the calamity of Heaven's Slayer. Now he had to face the will of the world. The pair of emotionless eyes glanced at Leng Shiqi indifferently. Immediately, an invisible force pressed down, as if it was about to kill Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi's expression was stern. Countless threads of different colors flashed around his body. Those were the threads of laws formed by thousands of laws. However, these were not the laws of the central plane, but the laws of the underworld. As the master of the underworld, he could barely use the laws of the underworld even in a different world. Countless threads of laws enveloped Leng Shiqi like a giant net. The power of the will of the world could be immediately discovered as long as it approached. One side of the net of laws immediately collapsed. Lung Shiqi clenched his hand, and a pitch-black energy appeared. When that energy appeared, the will of the world suddenly erupted. The might of the heavens descended and instantly shattered the giant net of laws, as if that black energy was very powerful. In fact, that energy was the origin power of the underworld. This was one of the trump cards Lung Shiqi had prepared for the will of the world. He had taken out his trump card as soon as he came up. In any case, it was either you die or I die. Immediately after, a power that could make all living things submit appeared in the 9 heavens. It was a power that could kill everything. World Force. The will of heaven and earth had actually used the power of the world to suppress the underworld's origin power. Lung Shiqi had already expected this. The underworld's origin power in his hand suddenly spread out, and the boundless netherworld aura behind him manifested everything in the underworld. He projected the world of the underworld into the central elemental plane, using the power of the world to fight against the power of the world. At the same time as the underworld world manifested, another magnificent mountain river painting appeared. Inside the painting were countless living beings. This was none other than the mountain river painting of the falling star continent. Lung Shiqi absorbed all the dragon veins and obtained the power of faith of the world. The will and faith of the people became his weapon against the will of the world. This was Lung Shiqi's strongest attack and his last chance. However, he had miscalculated one thing. The central elemental plane was now in ruins, and the world's origin power had weakened a lot. However, the underworld world had just been born. As the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Even if the underworld world and the people of the fallen star continent joined forces, they were still no match for the central elemental plane. The illusion of the underworld world disappeared, and the mountain river painting of the fallen star continent collapsed. Am I going to lose just like that? Lung Shiqi was extremely unwilling. He had used all his trump cards, but it was still not enough. In the end, he still could not defy the heavens. Unless he possessed a power even greater than the underworld's origin energy. Lung Shiqi could not believe it. What power could be stronger than the underworld world? At this moment, he suddenly seemed to have grasped something, and a flash of inspiration appeared in his mind. No, of course there was a power stronger than the underworld world. The underworld world was born out of the system. In the system, the underworld was just a subsidiary territory system. What was stronger than the underworld world was naturally the system. Before deciding to fight Tian-Yi, Lung Shiqi had not thought of using the system. Unfortunately, he had searched through the system store and could not find anything that could defeat the will of the world. Even if there was something, it was not as strong as his own strength. Therefore, he did not intend to use the system. At this moment, he suddenly had some understanding. Why did he have to find something in the system to deal with the will of the world? Was the system not the most powerful power itself? Moreover, his memory suddenly returned to many years ago, when he was still on Blood Mist Island. Not long after he had obtained the system, he had a question. Where did the things that he sold to the system go? Where did the things that the system gave him come from? At that time, he did not find the answer, and no one could give him the answer. But now he seemed to have found the answer. The will of the world's eyes flashed, and the power of the world returned to nothing, strangling Lung Shiqi everywhere. But this time, the power of the world was defeated before it could get close. At this moment, Lung Shiqi's body was surging with a strange power. This power did not belong to life, did not belong to death, did not belong to creation, did not belong to destruction, and was not even the power of the world. It was a power that had transcended life and death, and did not belong to any world. It was the system's laws. The system's laws turned into a sharp sword and slashed out. There was no sword skill to speak of, nor was there any power of the laws of the world. It was just an ordinary sword, but for the first time, the will of the world revealed a trace of fear. This sword was a threat to his life. The will of the world also moved for the first time. He waved his right hand, an endless power of the heavens descended. A wave of world power descended, wanting to suppress the sword chi. However, he miscalculated. The sword chi ignored the heavens' power and the power of the world, and shot directly in front of the will of the world. At this moment, The will of the world's body suddenly turned, and narrowly avoided the sword chi. In the blink of an eye, what awaited him was endless sword chi. The sword chi formed by the system's laws. The will of the world spread out his hands, and there was a sense of ceremony. Then endless power of the world kept gathering, and his body became more and more solid. In the end, he was no different from an ordinary person. He did not use any skills. He held the power of the world in his hands, and was about to kill Leng Shiqi. The boundless sword energy and the power of the world kept clashing against each other. There was no sound at all, nor was there any shocking movement. Leng Shiqi's sword energy was constantly being melted away, but it was constantly being reborn. Both sides seemed to have reached a stalemate. Leng Shiqi's expression became more and more serious. Unfortunately, he comprehended the system's laws too late. If he had comprehended it earlier, he could have at least figured out some other ways to use it, but now it was a little too late. In the process of resisting the will of the world, he was also deducing the system's laws. Right now, he was just a little bit away from comprehending it, and just a little bit away from being able to suppress the will of the world. However, his body was already unable to withstand the pressure of the system's laws and the power of the world. Chapter 954. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more. Leng Shiqi's body began to crack, and his soul kept shaking. He could be destroyed at any time. Now he was just a little bit away from being able to suppress the will of heaven and earth, or even kill it. However, who could help him stall for a little bit of time, or give him a little bit more power? It seemed like no one. Amitabha. At that moment, Master Tu Deng, who was tens of thousands of miles away, suddenly chanted Buddha's name. His expression was solemn as he said, "If I don't go to hell, who will?" Before anyone could understand why he suddenly said this, Tu Deng made an extremely shocking move. He put his palms together, and Buddhist light shot into the sky. The power of laws weaved into a golden lotus that lifted him up. Behind him, Buddhas, bodhisattvas, and arhats appeared and kowtowed to him. Tu Deng's aura rose to its limit. At that moment, there was a throbbing sound from the 9 heavens. The tribulation clouds arrived instantly. It was the heavenly slayer tribulation. Everyone was shocked. Tu Deng had chosen to transcend the tribulation to become a saint. Was he crazy? They retreated tens of thousands of miles away, afraid of being affected. The 10 skyfiends cried out, "What is this old monk doing? My aura was almost exposed. If the will of heaven and earth detects it, my life will be over." However, the 9 Sons Supreme Sage said, "I see. He wants to transcend the tribulation to disperse the will of heaven and earth's power. After all, as the world's spiritual energy dissipates, the will of heaven and earth will also weaken. It will not allow Leng Shiqi to become a saint, nor will it allow Tu Deng to become a saint. However, its power is limited. By sending down 2 heavenly slayer tribulations at the same time, the pressure on Leng Shiqi will be greatly reduced." Meng Tianzong said solemnly, "Tu Deng is using his life to share some of the pressure on Leng Shiqi." Everyone fell silent. As the saying went, every man for himself. To be able to reach this step, they were all extremely selfish people. Even if they saw Leng Shiqi take on the power of the world by himself and fight against the heavens, the outcome of this battle would have a great impact on them. However, they still chose to watch from the sidelines and observe the situation. And Tu Deng actually used a suicidal move to help Leng Shiqi. In other words, he was helping them. "Ha ha ha, I understand, I understand." The venerable beast suddenly laughed like a madman. Everyone looked at him, wondering why he was going crazy again. He looked in the direction of the Leng Shiqi, his eyes shining with endless fanaticism. "Shifter Emperor, let me do one last thing for you. I've been hiding my whole life, and I've had enough of hiding." After saying that, he actually revealed his true form. Demonic roars shook the sky, and he stretched out a giant arm, as if he wanted to pull down the sky. Following it, the will of the heavens and earth descended as another tribulation of heavenly death appeared. The few people beside him were shocked and angry. One ran faster than the other. "Crazy, another one has gone crazy. Even if you go crazy, don't drag us into it." Lung Shiqi suddenly felt the power of the will of heaven and earth weaken. He scanned with his divine telekinesis and realized that it was Tooting and the venerable beast who risked their lives to trigger the tribulation of heavenly death, taking away a portion of the will of heaven and earth's power. He was originally very close to suppressing the will of heaven and earth. Although no one could give him any more power now, they were using their lives to buy him a chance. Lung Shiqi's system laws suddenly burst forth, weaving into an inescapable net. Strip. The loss of the will of heaven and earth's power was the final straw that broke the camel's back. As the net of laws fell, all of the power of laws in the middle element world within its range was wiped clean, and the will of heaven and earth was visibly weakened. The situation instantly reversed. You claim to be the master of the world, but I don't come from this world. Lung Shiqi did not give the will of heaven and earth any chance to breathe. The system laws evolved into countless alternate worlds, and traces of world power with different auras continuously gathered. Of course, only world power could defeat world power. Those alternate worlds were the imaginary worlds in Lung Shiqi's mind. At this moment, he actually turned illusions into reality. Lung Shiqi instantly absorbed the world power of the alternate worlds. The middle prime world spontaneously began to reject these foreign powers, but to no avail. Because there were too many alternate worlds. The will of heaven and earth, which had never shown any emotion, actually showed a hint of fear at this moment. Lung Shiqi waved one hand, and the infinite worlds descended, completely suppressing the middle prime world. How could a mere world power resist the infinite world's power? In just an instant, the will of heaven and earth was completely suppressed by the infinite worlds. One wrong step after another. Because the will of heaven and earth lost a portion of its power, Lung Shiqi seized the opportunity to kill it in one blow. The will of heaven and earth that looked down on all living beings in the world was finally killed by someone. Speaking of which, it was a kind of irony. After the will of heaven and earth dissipated, only a ball of golden light was left in the air. Lung Shiqi could feel the world's origin energy from this ball of light. It was just like the underworld's origin energy, but much stronger. He knew that as long as he refined this origin energy, he could become the will of heaven and earth of heaven and earth. When this world returned to chaos and was reborn, he would be the master of heaven and earth. But he did not refine the world's origin energy, but kept it first. When his figure appeared from the 9 heavens, anyone who saw this scene knew that the middle prime world's sky had changed. For the next tens of thousands of years, the middle prime world would be ruled by this person. Lung Shiqi did not care about the gazes of others. He turned to look at Tooting and the venerable beast. Because the will of heaven and earth had fallen, the two's heavenly slayer tribulations had naturally dissipated. Tooting was very strong, and the dharma he cultivated was not of the middle prime world, so he only suffered some light injuries. On the other hand, the venerable beast was a little worse off. At this moment, his towering body was covered in wounds, and blood flowed like a river. Fortunately, he still had his breath. Lung Shiqi shot out a brilliant green light, and rich vitality enveloped the venerable beast, quickly healing his wounds. If not for Tooting and the venerable beast's heavenly slayer tribulations, he might not have had the chance to kill the will of heaven and earth. Words cannot express my gratitude. I will remember your kindness in my heart. Unexpectedly, the two shook their heads, and the venerable beast said sincerely, "It is my honor to be able to die for the Yao Emperor." Tooting chanted a Buddhist mantra. Almsgiver, you should focus on healing your wounds. The power of 10,000 realms was not something that could be easily withstood. Although Lung Shiqi had won this battle, his body was covered in cracks. Even the blood in his body had been burned to nothing. If not for his incredible physical strength, he would have died long ago, along with the will of heaven and earth. Yao Emperor, you are injured. The venerable beast was shocked at first, then he stood vigilantly beside Lung Shiqi. Although the will of heaven and earth was dead, Lung Shiqi was also seriously injured, and it was not safe at this time. The 9 Suns Supreme Sage and the 10 heavenly demons came one after another. They originally thought that once the will of heaven and earth dissipated, they would be able to return to the Saint Plane, but after several attempts, they still could not do so. Tooting, the venerable beast, and Meng Tianzong stood in front of Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi, we lent you our saint power. Now that the will of heaven and earth has fallen, why can't we sense the saint plane? The 10 heavenly demons questioned. Lung Shiqi knew their purpose, and he said, don't waste your time. The spiritual power of this world is no longer able to give birth to saint spirit masters. However, you still have your saint souls. Once the spiritual power reappears, you will be able to return to the saint plane. Really? I won't lie to you. Being able to kill the will of heaven and earth is also due to your contributions, but you need to understand one thing. At this point, Lung Shiqi's eyes were cold, and a surge of heavenly power descended, causing them to tremble in fear. The heavens cannot be doubted. These words exploded in their ears like thunder, and it caused their saint souls to tremble violently, almost collapsing. At this moment, they finally understood that standing in front of them was not the Lung Shiqi of the past, but a new heavens. Chapter 955. He had finally finished writing the book. I started writing in September 2019 and finished in September 2021. It took me 3 years. He had spent 3 years to write a book that barely had 2 million words. It was truly embarrassing. The author also used his spare time to write. At first, he saved 100,000 manuscripts and published it with the attitude of giving it a try. I was signed after 2 chapters, which gave me great motivation. When there was an epidemic, I had nothing to do at home, so I could write several chapters almost every day. I also capriciously published several times, so I didn't have many manuscripts left. After going to work normally, there was a lot of work backlog. Every day was very tiring, and the writing state was also very bad. It was difficult to maintain the standard of 2 chapters a day, so the book became 1 chapter a day. What moved me was that some readers expressed their understanding. And I want to say sorry, this book was unfinished for a while. The end of May was the busiest time of the year for the author. I really didn't have the time and energy to write a book. At most, I could occasionally think about the next plot. Fortunately, this book was finally finished. I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief because this was a long-time dream of mine. I had written some novels since high school, but none of them stuck, and none of them were published. It wasn't until my job was stable that I made up my mind to fulfill this childhood dream. However, more than 10 years had passed. The book's results weren't good. It could even be said that it was a complete failure, but I still survived. I have to thank the readers who have always supported me. Every time I wanted to give up, they kept encouraging me. Naturally, there were a lot of regrets in the book. The last 100,000 words should have been more than 500,000 words of content. A lot of the specific plot was simplified, resulting in some characters not being established. Fortunately, the holes dug were basically filled. Regrets weren't necessarily a bad thing. In life, it was impossible to do everything perfectly. Just like the Lung Shiqi in the book, even if he transcended this world, there were still hidden dangers and regrets. Only with regrets would there be motivation and desire to continue. When I typed the words "the book is finished," I suddenly understood the mentality of the ancient scholars. This book had tens of thousands of collections. In this world, so many people had read my work. Even if one day I was no longer here, I would more or less leave a trace in this world. Thinking about it, it was quite good. I will continue to write the book, but I won't easily publish it again. Work was getting busier and busier, and there were more and more trivial things to do at home. I could only squeeze out some spare time to write. Without the pressure of updating, perhaps my inspiration would be richer. The structure of this book has some ideas. This time, I won't care too much about the results. At the very least, I will save millions of words before I publish it. Alright, fellow Taoists, let's meet again if fate allows. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.